Welcome back, my dear night travelers. Tonight, we aren't just walking through haunted halls or shadowed highways, no. Tonight, we're sitting down to dinner. But this isn't an ordinary meal. This is a feast of whispers, shadows, and souls that never left the table. Across New York State, amid flickering candles and clinking wine glasses, there are restaurants where laughter and sorrow blend like the aroma of fine wine and old dust. Places where chairs pull out on their own, where waiters vanish mid-shift, swearing they heard footsteps in an empty kitchen. So light your candles, pour your drink, and let's explore the 25 most haunted restaurants in New York where spirits dine forever. In the heart of Manhattan's West Village stands a building steeped in elegance, history, and haunting whispers, known today as 1. If by land, 2. If by sea. This restaurant is celebrated for its candlelit tables, velvet drapes, and the soft glow of chandeliers that make it one of New York City's most romantic dining spots. But beneath the refinement lies something older and far darker. The story begins in the early 19th century, when Aaron Burr used this very site as a stable and carriage house. Burr was a man of charm, intellect, and ambition, and also of scandal. He lived just a few blocks away, and the steady clip of horses and carriages once echoed through these cobblestone streets as his household staff went about their duties. But after Burr's fateful duel with Alexander Hamilton in 1804, everything changed. Burr's career crumbled, his fortune disappeared, and his name became synonymous with disgrace. The carriage house was sold and forgotten, its walls left to absorb the slow passage of centuries and the weight of untold secrets. When it was eventually transformed into a restaurant in the 1920s, the old building seemed to resist its rebirth. Workers spoke of strange sounds, heavy footsteps, pacing the floorboards above them when no one was there. Candles would go out without a breeze. Mirrors and paintings would tilt on their own. One employee swore that while sweeping the upstairs corridor, she felt a sudden chill, so intense that her breath turned visible, though the summer heat outside was suffocating. From that night on, she refused to stay after closing. Patrons, too, began to notice odd things. A couple celebrating their anniversary once watched in silence as the flame of their candle bent sharply to the side, as though an invisible presence were leaning across the table to blow it out. A waiter lit it again, only for the same thing to happen seconds later. The guests laughed nervously, unaware that nearly everyone who dines there has a similar tale to tell. Portraits that hang on the restaurant's wood-paneled walls have been known to turn slightly, their angles changing ever so subtly when no one is watching. Some say it's a trick of the building settling, or a draft moving through the old plaster, but others believe it's the restless spirit of Burr himself, pacing between dimensions, drawn back to the place that once represented his power and pride. Perhaps the most chilling encounters occur upstairs, in what was once the servants' quarters. Guests who venture there, often as part of private events, describe the distinct sound of boots walking slowly across the floorboards, pausing just outside the door, then continuing again. The footsteps have a rhythm to them, deliberate and measured, as though a man is rehearsing a speech or reliving his final march toward destiny. The weight of history in that room is palpable. Even skeptics admit to feeling watched. Some believe Burr's daughter, Theodosia, also lingers in the building. Her tragic disappearance at sea has become part of American legend. She vanished without a trace in 1813 while sailing from South Carolina to New York. A few mediums claim that her spirit seeks out her father in the afterlife, forever wandering the places he once loved. On quiet nights, staff members have seen a faint figure near the staircase, a woman in old-fashioned dress, her face pale and indistinct, gliding silently toward the upper rooms before fading into the shadows. The restaurant's piano, an antique centerpiece near the bar, is another source of unease. After hours, when the dining room is empty and the last light has been turned off, faint notes drift through the air. It's never a full song, just a few melancholic chords, like someone trying to remember a melody long forgotten. Several managers have come running, only to find the piano lid closed and the room deserted. One bartender swears he once saw the keys move on their own, each note pressed by an invisible hand, before the sound abruptly stopped. Paranormal investigators who have visited the restaurant report strong electromagnetic readings in the upstairs rooms and inexplicable cold spots in the dining hall. Some even claim to have captured electronic voice phenomena, whispers that sound like Burr's name, or a low murmur of Theodosia. The restaurant staff has grown used to the unexplained. They light candles each evening, not just for ambience, but as one longtime server put it, to keep the shadows content. Yet, despite its ghostly reputation, one, if by land, two, if by sea, remains a beloved destination for romantic dinners and special occasions. Proposals happen here, anniversaries are celebrated, and glasses are raised in candlelight, all under the silent gaze of history itself. There is something poetic about the idea that love and loss coexist within these walls, that the same space can host laughter and longing, the living and the dead, all at once. Those who believe in spirits say that Aaron Burr's ghost still lingers, restless and unrepentant. Perhaps he cannot escape the weight of the duel that damned him, the one moment that defined his life and his legacy. Maybe he walks the halls of his old carriage house, listening to the piano's sorrowful echo, waiting for an opponent who will never return. Or perhaps, in the quiet moments between dinner services, when the last candle burns low, he finds a kind of peace, watching the living celebrate what he lost so long ago. Francis Tavern, standing proudly on the corner of Pearl and Broad Streets in Lower Manhattan, is more than just one of New York City's oldest surviving buildings. It's a living time capsule of America's turbulent birth. Behind its red brick facade in Georgian architecture lies a history steeped in revolution, intrigue, and whispers of the supernatural. It's a place where freedom was toasted, secrets were exchanged, and, as many now claim, spirits from centuries past still roam the halls. Built in 1719 by a New York merchant named Stefan Delancey, the building began its life as a family residence before being purchased by Samuel Francis in 1762. Francis transformed it into the Queen's Head Tavern, and it quickly became one of the city's most important gathering places. During the American Revolution, patriots and spies alike found refuge here. Drinking ale and exchanging intelligence beneath low-timbered ceilings, the tavern hosted fierce debates, coded messages, and secret meetings moments that would ultimately shape the course of history. But where such passion and danger gather, death and betrayal often follow close behind. In December of 1783, General George Washington famously delivered his farewell address to his officers in the long room upstairs, bidding them goodbye with tears in his eyes. The Revolutionary War was over, but the tavern's story had only just begun. After that night, something seemed to linger within the old walls, an energy that would not fade, as though the spirits of those who fought for liberty refused to leave the battlefield entirely. Over the centuries, Francis Tavern has endured fires, reconstruction, and even a deadly bombing in 1975. Yet the stories of its hauntings remain constant. Guests and employees alike report phantom footsteps echoing through empty corridors, chairs shifting on their own, and glasses clinking at the bar long after the last patron has gone home. The air carries the faint scent of tobacco and gunpowder, as if the revolution still smolders somewhere in the shadows. One of the most frequently seen apparitions is that of a man wearing a tricorn hat, the iconic three-cornered hat of the colonial era. Witnesses describe him as calm and well-dressed, his expression gentle but melancholy. He's often spotted near the stairwell, his faint smile illuminated by the soft glow of the tavern's antique lanterns. He lingers there for a few seconds, seemingly watching the living go about their business, before fading silently into thin air. Some believe he is Samuel Francis himself, eternally guarding the establishment that bore his name. Others think he could be a soldier who never made it home, still searching for his comrades among the ghosts of history. The long room, where Washington gave his farewell, is said to be especially active. Employees have heard faint murmurs of conversation when the room is locked, and empty voices rising and falling in a rhythm that sounds like men toasting and laughing. The ghostly chatter is often accompanied by the soft clink of glasses, as if an invisible banquet is taking place just beyond sight. On certain nights, Visitors claim to see shadowy figures seated at the long wooden table, their heads bowed in silent reflection. The air in the room becomes colder, heavier, as though the past has folded over the present. Downstairs, the bar carries its own collection of strange phenomena. Bartenders have watched bottles sway gently on their shelves, as if nudged by unseen hands. The swinging door to the kitchen opens on its own, sometimes staying ajar for several minutes before slowly closing again. One employee swears that while closing up late one evening, he heard the unmistakable sound of boot heels crossing the floor behind him. When he turned around, there was no one there, just the faint outline of footprints appearing briefly on the wooden boards before vanishing. Some of the most unsettling reports come from those who have encountered the ghostly soldiers said to patrol the corridors. Dressed in faded Continental Army uniforms, they appear briefly, often out of the corner of the eye, marching silently before disappearing through the walls. Visitors describe feeling a rush of cold air as the figures pass, followed by a deep stillness that seems to absorb all sound. Paranormal investigators who have studied the site claim to have captured whispers on their recorders, including one chilling phrase, "Hold the line." The words, faint but distinct, echo as if spoken by someone still bound to a war long over. There are also tales of a more tragic spiritual woman dressed in colonial attire who drifts between the bar and the staircase. Some believe she was once a servant who met an untimely end within the tavern's walls. Others think she might have been a spy, captured and silenced during the chaos of war. Her presence is often marked by the scent of lavender and the faint rustle of fabric, as though she still moves through the room, carrying invisible trays or listening for secrets that no longer matter. France's Tavern has become not just a museum and restaurant, but a place where time feels uncertain. Visitors come to learn about history, to dine where Washington once dined. But many leave with a deeper impressionist sense that they were not entirely alone. Even skeptics admit that the atmosphere shifts at night, when the chatter fades and the lights dim. The creak of floorboards, the faint laughter, the clink of phantom glasses, it all feels too real to dismiss. For over 300 years, the tavern has borne witness to America's transformation from colony to nation, from war to peace, and from memory to myth. Its ghosts, if they truly exist, are reminders of the human cost behind the founding of a country. They are the soldiers who never found rest, the spies who died in silence, the patriots who toasted victory but left pieces of their souls behind. In the heart of Soho, where cobblestone streets still whisper the city's maritime past, stands the Ear in one of New York's oldest bars, and easily one of its most haunted. Its red brick walls have weathered centuries of storms, laughter, and loss, and its wooden floors creak beneath the weight of stories too old to tell in full. The building itself dates back to the late 1700s. Originally constructed as a home and business for James Brown, an African-American Revolutionary War veteran who served under George Washington. In those early years, the air was thick with the scent of the Hudson River and the salty breeze that carried with it the promise of trade, adventure, and danger. The bar that would become the Ear began its life as a waterfront tavern, catering to sailors, dockworkers, and drifters. They came to drink hard, sing loud, and forget the ghosts of the sea. The smell of rum, sweat, and tobacco clung to the place like another layer of paint. The clientele was rough but loyal, and many came to consider the old tavern a second home, even in death. Among the many souls who passed through its doors, one in particular has refused to leave. His name, or at least the name he's come to be known by, is Mickey. No one knows for sure who Mickey was in life. Some say he was a merchant sailor, others a dockhand, and a few even whisper he was a smuggler. The most common version of the story goes back to 1810, when Mickey, in a drunken stumble, fell down the tavern's narrow staircase after one too many rounds of rum. His neck broke instantly, and his body was discovered the next morning sprawled at the foot of the steps. He never got the burial he deserved, and according to the staff and patrons of the Ear Inn, he never truly left. Those who frequent the bar say Mickey has a mischievous streak. He's not a vengeful spirit, nor a particularly malicious one, but but he loves to make his presence known. Women, especially, tend to attract his attention. Bartenders tell stories of female guests feeling an unseen hand brush against their back, or a gentle nudge as if someone were leaning in close to whisper over the music. More than once, a woman sitting alone has felt her bar stool shift, just enough to make her look over her shoulder, only to find no one there. Mickey also has a fondness for music. The jukebox in the Ear Inn has a habit of coming to life on its own, spinning old songs that no one remembers selecting. Sometimes it happens after hours, when the last patrons have gone and the lights are dimmed. A quiet hum fills the air, and then, without warning, the machine clicks and a tune begins to play, often something slow, nostalgic, and faintly sad. The staff have come to accept this as Mickey's nightly encore, his way of reminding them that he still belongs here. In fact, acknowledging Mickey has become a part of the closing ritual. Every night, after the chairs are stacked and the bar is wiped clean, someone will call out softly, "Good night, Mickey." It's not done out of fear, but respect, a simple gesture to keep the peace between the living and the dead. If they forget, strange things tend to happen. Glasses will tip over by themselves. Lights will flicker, even when the wiring has been checked. Once, an employee swore that a full bottle of rum slid several inches across the counter, as if nudged by an invisible hand. "He just wants attention," she said later, with a nervous laugh. And he sure gets it. The building itself seems to carry Mickey's energy. The narrow staircase, the one he supposedly fell from, still creaks ominously with every step, even when no one is near it. Upstairs, where the tavern once housed sailors' rooms, footsteps can sometimes be heard pacing back and forth, steady and rhythmic, as if someone is still waiting for their ship to come in. Occasionally, a door will open on its own, slow and deliberate. The air inside cool and heavy, with the faint scent of salt water and pipe smoke. Paranormal investigators who have visited the Ear Inn have reported cold spots, electromagnetic spikes, and unexplained sounds on their recorders. Faint whispers, the clink of glass, and a low chuckle that seems to drift from the bar itself. One group claimed to have caught a male voice saying, "Pour one for me." They obliged, leaving a glass of rum on the counter overnight. In the morning, the level of liquid had dropped slightly, as though someone or something had taken a sip. Despite these eerie happenings, the Ear Inn has never lost its charm. Its dimly lit interior, filled with nautical relics and old photographs, feels timeless, a sanctuary for locals, artists, and travelers who crave something real amid the noise of the city. The atmosphere is warm and welcoming, even with the occasional ghostly prank. For many, the hauntings are part of the tavern's personality, a living connection to its seafaring past. There's a strange comfort in the idea that Mickey still lingers. Perhaps he stays because he loved the life too much to leave it behind. The laughter, the music, the clatter of mugs against wood. Or perhaps he lingers because the sea took everything else from him, and this bar is the last place that still remembers his name. Whatever the reason, his presence has become as much a part of the Ear Inn as the smell of aged rum and the weathered brick that holds it together. Visitors often come hoping to see him, and while few claim to have glimpsed his shadow, many leave with stories of their own. A flickering light, a chill breeze, a jukebox that starts just as they mention his name. And almost everyone agrees on one thing: the bar feels alive. It hums with energy, memory, and something older. Something that belongs to another century. In the heart of Greenwich Village, where narrow streets curve like memory itself, stands the White Horse Taverner, brick-walled survivor of time, rebellion, and countless hangovers. Its wooden sign creaks in the breeze, and its yellow light spills onto Hudson Street like a beacon for the lost, the lonely, and the inspired. Founded in 1880, the White Horse is more than just one of New York's oldest pubs. It's a shrine to the restless spirits of writers, thinkers, and dreamers. But one ghost, in particular, has made it immortal. He came to the White Horse Tavern in the early 1950s, when the village was alive with jazz, cigarettes, and words that could cut through the smoky air like scripture. Thomas was a regular. He loved the warmth of the whiskey, the laughter of strangers, and the dim hum of conversation that blurred the line between brilliance and madness. It was here, in November of 1953, that his legend was sealed. The story goes that he walked into the bar, already unsteady, and ordered whiskey after whiskey. Between rounds, he talked poetry, told stories, and raised his glass to anyone who would listen. "I've had 18 straight whiskeys," he reportedly said near the end of the night. "I think that's the record." Hours later, he collapsed in his room at the Chelsea Hotel and never woke again. He was 39 years old. The White Horse became his last stage, his final poem written not with ink, but with fire and oblivion. Since that night, the White Horse Tavern has never truly been quiet. The clink of glasses, the hum of conversation, these are part of its soul. But there are moments when something else lingers, something colder. Bartenders speak of sudden chills when pouring whiskey alone, as though an invisible hand reaches out for the glass before they can set it down. They'll look up to see nothing but the empty mirror behind the bar, and yet sometimes, just for an instant, they swear they see a man's reflection there. Disheveled hair, tired eyes, and a faint, crooked smile. A figure raising a glass in a silent, eternal toast. Dylan Thomas's presence is strongest near the end of the bar, where he often sat, scribbling lines on napkins and muttering to himself. Patrons claim that the stool he favored occasionally rocks gently on its own, as if someone has just taken a seat. The air grows heavy, then thick with the smell of tobacco and old spirits, a blend that doesn't quite belong to the present. One visitor described hearing faint laughter from that corner, low and distant, echoing beneath the clatter of glasses. "It wasn't the sound of the living," she said later, "but it wasn't frightening either. It felt sad, like someone trying to remember how to be alive." Over the decades, the tavern became a pilgrimage site for artists, musicians, and writers who wanted to drink where Dylan drank, to chase that same fleeting spark of brilliance. Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Bob Dylan, and countless others walked through the same door, searching for inspiration in the haze of whiskey and memory. The White Horse became their temple, its ghosts both muse and warning. The mirror behind the bar, now famous in its own right, has seen generations of faces, each one hoping to catch a glimpse of the poet who never left. Employees have learned to live with the haunting. One longtime bartender admits he still talks to Dylan when closing up. "Just a good night, mate, before I shut the lights," he says. "If I forget, I swear the place feels heavier, like he's still waiting for one more round." Glasses have been known to slide an inch across the counter without reason. Bottles clink softly, as though touched by an unseen hand. And sometimes, on especially quiet nights, when the wind rattles the old windows, the faint sound of a man's voice reciting poetry can be heard, muffled, rhythmic, full of longing. Visitors who claim to have seen Dylan's ghost describe him as translucent but vivid, dressed in the same rumpled coat he wore the night he died. His expression is wistful, almost amused, as though he knows the irony of his eternal residency. "He looks like he's about to tell a story," one woman said after catching sight of his reflection. "But when you blink, he's gone, and all that's left is your own face staring back." The haunting extends beyond the barroom upstairs, where the tavern stores its supplies. Staff have reported hearing footsteps pacing back and forth, slow and deliberate, as if someone is rehearsing lines to a poem. The creak of the old floorboards becomes a metronome to the silence. Lights flicker for no reason. Doors close gently, without a breeze. Each sound feels deliberate, not random, an echo from a world just beyond reach. If anything, Dylan's ghost seems content, perhaps even grateful to remain in the place where his legend found its final punctuation. This was, after all, where he was happiest, in the company of words, whiskey, and kindred souls. The tavern, like him, has refused to fade away. Today, tourists come to sit in his corner, tracing their fingers over the worn wood, hoping to feel even a whisper of that haunted inspiration. The air hums with life, laughter, and the faint undertone of something eternal. In the dim glow of the lamps, shadows stretch across the walls, merging the living with the dead in one endless toast to art and memory. The White Horse Tavern endures as both a monument and a warning, a place where genius burned too bright and too fast. Its walls are lined with photographs of writers and revolutionaries, faces that once filled the bar with noise and brilliance. Yet, amid the clatter and chatter, there's always that faint sense of presence. That moment when the laughter dips and the air grows still. In the quiet suburb of Elmont, Long Island, sits an unassuming Italian restaurant that has become both a local legend and a place of eerie reverence. King Umberto Restaurant, known far and wide for its golden brown pizzas and warm family atmosphere, carries with it a haunting story that transcends food and fortune. Beneath the clatter of plates and the aroma of garlic and wine lies a mystery that has unsettled even the most skeptical. Dinor's a tale of dreams, disaster, and the unshakable feeling that some spirits never left the table. Before the tragedy of September 11, 2001, the owners of King Umberto were living what seemed like an ordinary life. Brothers Joseph and Louis and their partner, Chef Frank, were deeply devoted to their restaurant. They had plans to meet that very morning with representatives at the windows on the World Restaurant, located atop the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The meeting was business as usual, a chance to expand, to dream bigger. But in the days leading up to the appointment, something strange began to happen. Joseph couldn't sleep. Each night, he dreamt of planes' massive silver wings slicing through a sky that burned red with fire. He saw towers crumbling, smoke thick as night, rising from the city he loved. The images were vivid, too vivid, and they left him shaken. Frank, too, confessed to a sense of unease. He told his partners that he had dreamt of falling glass, of people running through ash, of a city crying out in silence. It was all too strange to ignore. The morning of the scheduled meeting, they made a last-minute decision to cancel. Something didn't feel right. They would later say, "We just couldn't go." At 8:46 a.m., the first plane struck the North Tower. As the world watched in disbelief, the men at King Umberto stood frozen in their restaurant kitchen, realizing that their decision had saved their lives. The enormity of it didn't sink in for days, but when it did, it came with a quiet, enduring sorrow. They felt gratefully yet haunted. Their dreams had been a warning, one that carried an invisible weight, and ever since that morning, the restaurant has never quite felt the same. In the years that followed, customers and employees began to notice things that defied explanation. During late-night cleanups, after the last guests had gone, the dining room would sometimes fill with faint sounds, whispers, low and rhythmic, like prayers spoken in another room. The staff would pause, thinking someone was still there. But when they looked, the tables were empty. The air would grow still and heavy, carrying a scent of smoke that didn't belong. On some nights, when the lights were dimmed, the reflection in the front windows seemed to shift. Shapes vague, human appeared to move just beyond the glass, fading as quickly as they came. Every September, the activity intensifies. The anniversary of that fateful day seems to stir something in the walls of King Umberto. Employees say they hear the soft sound of footsteps along the tiled floor, though the doors are locked and the alarms set. A few have described hearing quiet weeping in the back hallway near the kitchen, only for the sound to stop the moment they approach. One server swears she once heard someone whisper her name, followed by a sigh that carried both sorrow and peace. She turned to find no one behind her, just a single candle flickering on a table that had been wiped clean minutes earlier. Some believe the restaurant acts as a conduit for the spirits of those lost on 9/11s. It's as if the souls who perished that morning, in some unseen way, know what happened here, that these men were spared, not by chance, but by something larger. The theory among locals is that the energy of gratitude and grief is imprinted in the very walls. It's not a haunting. One longtime customer once said softly, "It's a visitation." The owners themselves never sought publicity for the story. They speak of it with quiet humility, insisting that they were simply lucky. Yet, even they admit, the strange occurrences are impossible to ignore. Frank once told a reporter that on several anniversaries, he has felt the faint touch of a breeze inside the kitchen, though no windows were open, and a low murmur, like a room full of voices whispering in prayer. He described it not as frightening, but deeply moving. "It feels like they're passing through," he said. "Like they're saying thank you." The restaurant's regulars have grown accustomed to its peculiar atmosphere. In early September, the lights seem softer. The air carries a stillness that settles over the dining hall as the sun sets. Some guests have said they've felt a presence nearby, a comforting one, not cold or cruel. A woman once described dining there on the eve of the anniversary and hearing what sounded like faint music, though none was playing. It wasn't from the speakers, she said. It was like a song carried by the air itself. Despite the unsettling accounts, there's something undeniably sacred about King Umberto. It has become a place not just of survival, but remembrance. The staff continue their tradition each September 11th, lighting a candle near the front entrance, saying a prayer, and serving those who come in seeking warmth and comfort. They don't speak of the dreams anymore, but the memory lingers, deep and unspoken. Even the building seems to remember. On some nights, when the wind passes over the old roof, the faint echo of clinking glasses drifts through the rooms, as though unseen guests have gathered for one last meal. Those who work there don't run or panic. They simply pause, bow their heads, and whisper a greeting into the air. In the years since that terrible day, King Umberto Restaurant has continued to thrive, but it carries with it a weight of quiet reverence. Beneath the laughter of families and the hum of conversation, there's an undercurrent of gratitude for life, for chance, for the unseen hand that guided three men away from tragedy. And perhaps, in that space between the living and the lost, the souls of that morning still return, drawn, not by sorrow, but by something simpler, purer. Brennan and Carr, a humble roast beef restaurant tucked away on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn, has been feeding New Yorkers since 1938. Known for its signature roast beef sandwiches, drenched in ojus, the small brick building has become a local landmark, a place where the smell of slow-cooked meat and nostalgia hang thick in the air. But behind its comforting aromas and family-friendly charm, there lingers something else, something older, something that doesn't belong to the living. Employees and longtime patrons whisper about a manna-pale figure in a grease-stained apron who appears after closing time or during quiet hours. He never speaks. He stands near the counter, his expression calm but distant, as though caught in the middle of a memory. What remains is the faint smell of burnt wood and tobacco, drifting through the air like a ghost's sigh. The legend begins decades ago, long before the restaurant gained its loyal following. Back in the 1940s, a kitchen fire nearly destroyed Brennan and Carr. The story goes that the blaze started late one night, after the last customer had gone home. The owner's right-hand manachef, known only as Lou, had stayed behind to clean up. He was a quiet man, devoted to his work, often seen wiping the counters long after everyone else had clocked out. He took pride in perfection, the kind of cook who made sure every sandwich looked the same. Every slice of beef cut at just the right angle. That night, something went wrong. Some say a grease trap overflowed. Others believe it was a cigarette left burning on the counter. Whatever the cause, the fire spread quickly, devouring the wooden frame and filling the small kitchen with black smoke. By the time neighbors saw the flames and called for help, it was too late. Lou was found near the back door, hand outstretched toward the latch, as if he'd been trying to escape. The restaurant was rebuilt soon after, brick by brick, with new owners and new staff. Brennan and Carr reopened to fanfare, its famous roast beef sandwiches, drawing crowds once again. But old-timers say the building still carries the scent of that fire, faint smokiness that lingers in the corners, no matter how often the place is cleaned. Some nights, when the weather turns cold, the smell of charred wood creeps through the vents. That's when people say, Lou returns. In the early 1960s, a delivery man reported seeing someone standing by the counter before dawn, wearing a white apron streaked with grease. Thinking the restaurant had opened early, he knocked on the window, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, half in shadow, until it vanished before his eyes. When the delivery man told the owner, he was met with a knowing look. "You must have seen Lou," the owner said. "He's been here longer than any of us." Since then, countless stories have followed. A waitress once dropped a tray when she saw a man reflection appeared behind her in the stainless steel counter. A man, who wasn't actually there. Another time, the night manager reported hearing the hiss of a gas burner flicking on by itself, followed by the sound of someone tapping a spoon against a pot. When he checked the kitchen, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and old tobacco. But the burners were off, and the lights flickered like they were struggling to stay lit. The strangest part, Lou's ghost doesn't seem angry. Those who claim to have seen him describe an aura of calm, even dedication, as though he's still tending to his kitchen duties. Some staff members even find comfort in his presence. They say when the night is quiet, the old cook returns to make sure things are done right, that the meat is sliced just so, the gravy warmed to perfection. Yet, there's always that smell, the scent of fire and tobacco that seeps into the air moments before the ghost appears. Scientists might chalk it up to an old building's ventilation system, or the remnants of burnt oil soaked into the brick walls. But for the workers who've been there long enough, it's a sign. When that scent rolls in, they know Lou is nearby. In the 1990s, a local paranormal group visited Brennan and Carr after hearing the ghost stories. They brought infrared cameras and digital recorders, hoping to capture evidence of the unseen chef. During their session, one investigator asked aloud, "Lou, are you still here?" A moment later, the EMF meter spiked, and the faint sound of clattering pots echoed through the kitchen, though the room was empty. The cameras caught a flicker of movement near the counter, a shape that looked almost human before it melted into the shadows. When they reviewed the audio later, they swore they heard a single whispered word. Yes, today, Brennan and Carr remains a beloved Brooklyn institution. Families come for the roast beef, the dipping juice, and the old-fashioned atmosphere. Photos of decades past line the walls, showing the restaurant through time and changed, almost eternal. But if you stay long enough after dark, when the last customer leaves and the lights dim to a soft amber glow, you might notice something unusual. Maybe you'll hear the faint scrape of a knife against a cutting board when no one is around. Or you'll see a shape move past the counter, too quick to be caught, too clear to be imagined. The air might grow warm for a moment, as if the flames of that long air fire still flicker unseen. The employees don't talk much about it anymore. They've accepted that Lou is part of the place, a quiet guardian of the kitchen, forever tied to the scent of smoke and the soft hum of the grill. And sometimes, when a new worker joins and stays late to clean up, they'll look up to see him standing there pale, watchful, almost proud. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The smell of burnt wood drifts through the air, carrying a memory of the fire that claimed him, the tobacco he used to smoke on breaks, and the dedication that never died. McSorley's Old Ale House in Manhattan is a living museum of New York's past, a place where time holds its breath beneath the hum of conversation and the scent of ale. Established in 1854, it is the city's oldest continuously operating bar. Its sawdust-covered floors and nicotine-stained walls, carrying more than a century and a half of stories. The air inside is thick with history, and if you stay long enough, you might feel the weight of eyes that no longer belong to the living. The wooden tables, scarred and uneven, have hosted everyone from Abraham Lincoln to John Lennon. Old photographs hang crookedly on the walls, yellowed with age, their faces frozen in sepia smiles. Behind the bar, mugs hang in neat rows, some untouched for decades, reserved for patrons who never returned. And every now and then, when the last round has been served and the lights begin to dim, those mugs tremble, clink softly together, or move on their own. The staff have stopped trying to explain it. They just nod, pour another ale, and say quietly, "The boys are thirsty tonight." The boys they refer to are the ghost spirits, said to be soldiers, sailors, and patrons from long ago. During the Civil War, McSorley's was a haven for Union soldiers. Many came here before shipping out, drinking one last pint in good company before facing the unknown. Some never came back. Regulars believe their spirits still linger, waiting for the friends who promised to meet them again at McSorley's once the war was over. There's an old legend that one of those soldiers, a young man named Thomas Riley, was a favorite of the owner. Riley left for the front in 1863 and was never heard from again. Yet for years afterward, bartenders claimed they saw him standing near the fireplace, a faint, gray mist shaped like a man, wearing what looked like a tattered uniform coat. He would appear after closing time, just as the last candle burned low, as though drawn back to the place where his final moments of joy were spent. The fireplace itself is a focal point of strange occurrences. The staff often report a cold draft forming there even in the height of summer, accompanied by a faint metallic scent, gunpowder, some say. Others describe the crackle of phantom embers or the soft sound of boots shifting on the wooden floor. Patrons who sit too close to that corner sometimes feel a sudden drop in temperature, or catch the faint murmur of men's voices, deep, jovial, and echoing from nowhere. Over the decades, countless witnesses have reported ghostly happenings. Beer mugs slide across the bar without being touched. Chairs creak as if someone has just sat down. The floors, already old and groaning, sometimes echo with the rhythmic stomp of unseen footsteps. One night, a bartender cleaning up after hours heard the distinct sound of laughter coming from the back room. When he peeked in, the air was thick with gray smoke, and he swore he could make out the shapes of men raising their mugs in a silent toast before fading away. Photographs taken inside the bar often capture more than intended. In the 1970s, a tourist snapped a picture near the fireplace and later discovered a faint figure beside her outline of a man wearing what looked like an old soldier's cap. Paranormal investigators have since visited the bar, capturing strange anomalies in their recordings: whispers, footsteps, and even the sound of clinking glasses when the bar was completely empty. Some regulars believe the spirits aren't limited to soldiers. McSorley's has seen all kinds: writers, dockworkers, politicians, and poets. One of its most famous patrons, the writer Joseph Mitchell, once called it a place where the past is never past. He might have meant it metaphorically, but perhaps he was closer to the truth than he realized. The ghosts of old regulars, they say, still gather in their favorite corners, reluctant to leave the warmth of the alehouse that once made them feel at home. There is also talk of a woman's presence rare in a bar that for more than a century only allowed men through its doors. Some believe she's the spirit of a bartender's wife from the early 1900s, who died of illness while her husband was working late one night. Her perfume, faintly floral, has been noticed by patrons sitting alone at the bar. Sometimes, when a glass tips over on its own or a candle flickers without cause, the staff smile knowingly and say, "She's just making herself known." Even skeptics find it hard to dismiss the atmosphere. The building itself seems to breathe with history: the low ceilings, the warped wood, the ancient layers of dust that no broom can entirely clear. Some evenings, as twilight filters through the narrow front windows, the light catches the dust in such a way that it almost looks like smoke swirling from invisible pipes. It's easy, in those moments, to imagine that the men who once filled this room with laughter and song have merely stepped away for a while and could return at any moment. During the pandemic lockdown, when the bar was temporarily closed for the first time in its long history, workers who came in to check on the property reported odd happenings: the sound of a chair scraping, a single mug left on the bar when no one had been there. One man even claimed to hear an old song playing faintly from nowhere, the melody of "When Johnny Comes Marching Home," drifting through the silence like a memory that refused to fade. To this day, McSorley's old alehouse remains much as it always was: dim, smoky, and timeless. The same two types of ale are served, light or dark, poured in pairs as tradition dictates. The walls are lined with old wishbones left by soldiers heading off to war, each one representing a promise to return. Some never did, and yet the wishbones still hang there, collecting dust, silent reminders of those who went away and perhaps came back in a different form. Late at night, when the last customers leave and the lights are lowered, the bar grows strangely alive again. The air grows heavy with unseen company. The mugs tremble, the floorboards creak, and the faint smell of smoke curls near the fireplace. Maybe it's just old air shifting through the cracks of a worn-out building, or maybe it's something else. The red coach Inn sits quietly across from the thundering majesty of Niagara Falls, its Tudor-style facade bathed in a mist that never truly lifts. Since it opened in 1923, the inn has offered warmth and comfort to travelers seeking rest near one of the world's greatest natural wonders. With its stone walls, crackling fireplaces, and charming red shutters, it looks like something out of an English countryside dream. But for all its cozy charm, there's an undercurrent of sorrow that clings to its corridors, sadness born of love, loss, and the eternal pull of the falls themselves. The legend that defines the Red Coach Inn begins not long after it opened. In the summer of 1927, a young couple arrived to celebrate their honeymoon. They were newly married, full of hope, and eager to begin their life together. According to old guest ledgers, they checked into one of the upper rooms overlooking the rapids. The husband was seen carrying their suitcases with a broad smile, the bride laughing behind him, her white dress trailing along the carpet. No one could have guessed that within 24 hours, tragedy would strike. The story goes that the couple quarreled that night. No one knows what the argument was about, perhaps a misunderstanding, perhaps something deeper. What's known is that the next morning, the husband went to town to buy breakfast. When he returned, the room was empty. The window overlooking the falls was open, and on the windowsill, the wind stirred a folded note, heavy with tears. The bride had vanished. Her body was later found near the base of the falls, carried by the relentless current. She had leaped to her death, leaving behind nothing but her veil and the faint scent of roses that clung to the room for weeks afterward. Since that day, guests have claimed the inn never truly recovered. The room where she stayed, known to staff as the honeymoon suite, was closed for years. Even now, some visitors say they hear weeping behind its door late at night. Others report waking to the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth above them, as if someone in a long gown were wandering restlessly in the dark. The cleaning staff, when asked about the room, often exchange wary glances. One longtime housekeeper once admitted, "I never go in there alone. You can feel her before you see her. Her presence isn't limited to the guest rooms." In the dining hall, where candles flicker in their sconces and the scent of roast meat fills the air, strange things happen when the night deepens. Plates rattle without cause. Silverware shifts by unseen hands. Glasses tremble as if touched by something invisible. Diners have felt a sudden, icy breeze brush their shoulders even when the windows are closed. Some describe it as gentle, almost affectionate, like a hand reaching out for reassurance. Others feel an overwhelming sense of grief in that moment, as though they've absorbed the echo of a heartbreak too heavy to fade. There are those who believe the ghost of the bride doesn't linger in anger or vengeance, but in sorrow. The energy of her love, abruptly broken, might have tied her to the place where her dreams died. Staff members say she sometimes appears on quiet nights, gliding down the hallways in her wedding gown. Her face is pale, her expression distant, eyes fixed on something unseen. She is most often seen near the grand staircase, where she pauses briefly before vanishing into a faint shimmer of light, leaving behind a chill that lingers for minutes afterward. Guests who've stayed in the inn tell stories that sound eerily similar. A man visiting from Chicago once claimed that his door opened on its own at 3 a.m, and standing in the doorway was a woman in white. He said she looked lost, her gown damp as though soaked by mist. When he spoke, she turned her head toward him, her lips parting as if to say something, but then she disappeared. He checked out early the next day, shaken but unable to deny what he had seen. Not all of the inn spirits seem sad. Over the decades, other reports have surfaced, laughter echoing from empty halls, the faint strains of a violin from the parlor when no musician is present. Some say these are the echoes of guests long gone, their happiest moments replaying over and over. The Red Coach Inn has hosted thousands of honeymoons, anniversaries, and quiet dinners. Perhaps joy and sorrow intertwine here, drawn together by the power of the falls, a natural force that has witnessed both love and tragedy since time immemorial. In the restaurant, one of the oldest servers recalls a strange incident that still haunts her. Late one evening, just before closing, a single table near the window remained set for two. No reservation, no guests. Yet, when she turned away, she heard the faint clink of silverware. When she looked back, both napkins were unfolded, and a single rose petal rested on one of the plates. The air smelled faintly of perfume roses again. No one else had been in the room. She quietly extinguished the candles and whispered, "Good night, dear," before locking up for the night. The inn's proximity to the falls only adds to the mystique. The roar of the water outside is constant, a ceaseless rhythm that drowns out the living world. Some psychics claim that the mist carries memories, trapping emotions like cobwebs in the air. The Red Coach Inn, they say, is a vessel for those memories, a place where passion, despair, and longing are absorbed by the very walls. Each gust of mist that blows through the open windows brings whispers from the past, carried by the breath of the falls. Visitors who stay overnight often mention vivid dreams. They dream of weddings in candlelight, of veils fluttering in the wind, of the roar of water turning into a woman's sobs. Some wake with the sense that someone is sitting at the foot of their bed, only to find nothing there except the faint indent of weight on the blanket. And when morning comes, the rooms feel strangely still, as if the entire building has exhaled after holding its breath all night. To this day, the Red Coach Inn welcomes guests from all over the world. It remains one of the most romantic destinations near Niagara Falls, a place where love stories begin and sometimes refuse to end. The staff continue their work with quiet respect, aware that they are not alone. The bride, it seems, still walks among the man, eternal newlywed, caught between joy and despair, reaching out across time for the life that slipped through her fingers. The Sagamore Resort in Bolton Landing stands as a crown jewel on the shores of Lake Georgia, grand retreat of elegance, luxury, and timeless charm. Its restaurant, known for its sweeping views of the water and refined ambience, is where guests dine beneath glittering chandeliers as moonlight glistens on the lake outside. Yet, behind the laughter of tourists and the clinking of fine china, there lingers something else. The Sagamore's beauty hides whispers of another world, a quiet presence that reminds visitors that even paradise can have ghosts. Built in the late 1800s, the Sagamore was designed as an exclusive resort for the wealthy elite who sought escape from New York City's summer heat. It was the golden age of American leisure, horse-drawn carriages, lavish balls, and candlelit dinners overlooking the still waters of Lake George. But with opulence often comes tragedy. Fires ravaged the resort more than once, and rumors of death, accidents, illnesses, and even heartbreak began to surround the place. Each rebuilding brought fresh life, but also seemed to awaken echoes of the past. The restaurant, perched with a perfect view of the lake, is said to be one of the most haunted parts of the entire resort. Waitstaff have grown used to strange happenings, plates that slide across tables on their own, glasses that tip as if nudged by unseen fingers, and the faint sound of laughter drifting through empty dining rooms after midnight. Among all the stories, two spirits stand out most vividly. A woman in a long gown who roams the terrace, and a playful little boy who rolls his ball across the dining room floor. The woman is often seen at dusk, when the last orange rays of sunlight spill across the lake. Guests sipping wine on the terrace have reported catching sight of her, a tall, graceful figure dressed in early 20th century fashion, her gown fluttering in the breeze, though no wind can be felt. She appears near the railing, gazing out over the water with a melancholy air. Some say she's searching for someone lost long ago. Others believe she was once a guest of great wealth who met a tragic end. One popular tale claims she was a young bride staying at the Sagamore in the 1920s. Her husband, a wealthy businessman, drowned in a boating accident just offshore during their honeymoon. Overcome with grief, she returned to the terrace every evening, staring out at the lake where he vanished. When she died years later, her spirit, it seems, never stopped waiting. Now she appears in a soft glow of moonlight, her form faint but distinct, her presence accompanied by the scent of roses and lake mist. The little boy's ghost is a different story altogether, less sorrowful, more mischievous. His legend dates back to the early years of the resort, when wealthy families would bring their children for summer holidays. One afternoon, A group of children played near the dining room terrace, rolling a ball back and forth between them. In a tragic twist, the ball rolled off toward the edge, and one young boy chased after it, slipping and falling down the steep embankment toward the water. He didn't survive. Now, guests and staff say he still plays within the restaurant walls. Late at night, when the dining room is empty and the tables are set for the morning, the sound of a ball rolling softly across the wooden floor can be heard. Sometimes, it even bounces once or twice before stopping abruptly. A few waiters have reported seeing the ball itself, a small, faded red sphere, appear out of nowhere and roll across the room before disappearing under a table. Those who have witnessed it speak with a mix of fear and sadness, knowing the playful spirit likely doesn't realize he's gone. Chefs in the kitchen have their own share of eerie experiences. They often work long after guests have gone to bed, preparing for the next day's service. More than one cook has claimed to hear faint piano notes drifting through the ventilation, system, an old tune, elegant and haunting, like something that might have been played during one of the resort's grand dinners a century ago. When they check the dining room, there's nothing but silence. The piano sits still, the keys untouched, yet the echoes linger. Others have heard laughter, soft and distant, as if a gathering was still taking place in another time. One sous chef once swore he heard a woman's voice humming a tune right behind him, but when he turned, no one was there. Only the faint scent of perfume and a chill that ran through the air. Even guests who come knowing nothing of the legends find themselves unnerved. A couple celebrating their anniversary once reported hearing a child giggle near their table during dinner. Thinking it was part of another party, they looked around, but no children were present. When they mentioned it to the waiter, his face grew pale. "That's not the first time," he said softly. "You probably heard our little friend." Staff who have worked at the Sagamore for years say that these spirits are harmless. The woman on the terrace and the little boy in the dining room seem bound to the place by memory rather than malice. Their appearances are like ripples of history, moments repeating themselves across time. The laughter, the music, the soft brushing of unseen hands, while reminders of lives once lived in luxury and joy that ended too soon. Yet there are moments when the atmosphere shifts, when even the bravest employees admit to feeling uneasy. One manager closing the restaurant late one night felt something brush against his shoulder, gentle but deliberate. When he turned, he caught a glimpse of a woman's silhouette reflected in a glass doll, graceful, wearing a long gown. But when he looked behind him, the terrace was empty, the lake shrouded in mist. On foggy nights, the ghosts of the Sagamore seemed closest. The lake becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the lights of the resort, but the shadows of those who refuse to leave. Guests sitting by the windows often claim to see faint figures walking along the water's edge or standing beneath the terrace archway. They vanish as quickly as they appear, swallowed by the mist and the silence that follows. Today, the Sagamore remains one of Lake George's most elegant destinations. Its restaurant renowned for fine dining and breathtaking views. But for those who know its secrets, the experience carries an extra layer of mystery. Every laugh, every clink of glass, every note of background music seems to mingle with something older, something that lingers from another era. The Bull's Head in Cablaskill, New York, is one of those rare places where history breathes through the walls, and sometimes that breath feels far too close. Built in 1802, the inn is the oldest building in the village, a relic of early America that has seen soldiers, travelers, and townsfolk pass through its doors for more than 2 centuries. Its creaking staircases, low-beamed ceilings, and antique furnishings make it a living time capsule. But for those who've worked or stayed there, the Bull's Head in isn't just a monument to the past. It's a place where the past never truly left. Most of the hauntings center around the second floor, an area so active that some employees refuse to enter it alone. The moment you step onto the landing, the air changes. It grows colder, heavier, as though unseen eyes are watching. Many describe feeling a sudden chill that cuts through even on warm summer days. Glasses have been known to rattle on their shelves without warning. Footsteps echo through the attic above, and doors slam with a force that can't be explained by drafts or old hinges. The spirit most often blamed for the disturbances is a woman known as Mrs. John Stacy. She was the wife of one of the inn's earliest owners, and her presence has been reported for decades. Mrs. Stacy is believed to have been a strong-willed woman, elegant, proud, and fiercely protective of her tavern. During her lifetime, the Bull's Head was a place of reputation, where travelers could expect fine food, honest company, and good drink. After her death, it seems she decided to keep watch over her beloved in ensuring its name is treated with the respect it deserves. According to legend, Mrs. Stacy's ghost makes herself known when anyone mocks the building or questions its history. Guests who laughed about ghosts or called the stories nonsense have quickly changed their tune. There are countless reports of doors slamming with thunderous force right after someone makes a dismissive remark. Others have heard sharp knocking on walls or the unmistakable sound of a woman's voice scolding from the shadows. Employees say it's best not to joke about her, especially near the second-floor hallway. One bartender put it plainly, "You can say what you want outside, but once you're upstairs, keep your mouth shut. She's listening." Those who have dared to test that warning often regret it. One group of ghost hunters, during a late-night investigation, asked out loud if Mrs. Stacy ever got tired of running her tavern. Before they could finish laughing, the temperature in the room plummeted. A door slammed so hard it shook the walls, and a framed picture fell to the floor, shattering the glass. Their equipment malfunctioned moments later, batteries drained and recorders filled with bursts of static. When they played the audio back later, they heard something faint beneath the noise, a woman's voice saying, "Respect my house." The second floor seems to be her territory. Guests staying in the upstairs rooms have reported being awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of heavy footsteps pacing overhead. But when staff check, the attic is empty. Some hear the sound of heels walking slowly down the hallway, stopping right outside their doors before fading away. Others feel an icy draft sweep across their faces, or the weight of someone sitting on the edge of their bed. One visitor described waking to see the faint outline of a woman in a long dress standing by the window, her back turned, as though she were gazing out at the street below. It's not just Mrs. Stacy who seems to linger in the inn over its long history. The Bull's Head has seen plenty of life and death. During the 19th century, the building served as a tavern, boarding house, and meeting place for travelers heading west. Many stayed overnight, some never left. Rumors persist of a young girl who died of illness in one of the upstairs rooms and now runs through the halls, giggling at night. There are also tales of a man's shadowy figure seen near the bar after closing, perhaps a long ago regular who can resist one last drink. Still, Mrs. Stacy remains the dominant presence. Staff who've worked there for years say they can sense her moods. When the inn is busy, full of laughter and conversation, the energy feels warm, almost protective. But when tempers rise or disrespectful comments are made, the atmosphere changes instantly. Dishes shake, doors slam, and the temperature drops without warning. Some even claim the lights flicker, as if in warning, reminding everyone that the lady of the house still rules her domain. One former employee tells a story that perfectly captures this. Late one night, after closing, he was cleaning up near the bar when a group of friends came in, joking about the inn's ghosts. They started saying things like, "Maybe the old lady's still waiting for a tip," he recalled. Right then, the front door flew open by itself, and every glass on the counter rattled. The laughter stopped fast. We all just looked at each other. The room went dead silent. When he turned back toward the staircase, he swore he saw a faint glow on the landing, a shimmer shaped like a woman's silhouette. Even those who daren't believe in ghosts admit that the Bull's Head Inn has an undeniable energy. The building's age, its wood and stone, soaked with generations of memories, seems to hold echoes of everything that has ever happened there. Paranormal investigators who visit often record unexplained cold spots, strange sounds, and orbs of light in photographs. Some say the inn acts like a beacon, drawing spirits from the surrounding area to its warm, familiar glow. Downstairs, in the dining room and bar, guests enjoy hearty meals and local drinks while surrounded by antique decor. The scent of old wood and candle wax lingers in the air. But even here, the supernatural makes its presence known. Glassware has been known to shift or clink together on its own, as if in a silent toast. Mirrors fog mysteriously in certain corners. One server says she once felt a firm hand on her shoulder when no one was behind her. It wasn't scary, she said, just a reminder that she was there. Despite its haunted reputation, or perhaps because of it, the Bull's Head Inn remains a beloved landmark. Visitors come for the history, the food, and, yes, the thrill of possibly encountering a ghost. The owners have embraced the building's paranormal legacy, even hosting ghost tours and investigations. But out of respect, they always end each night the same way, by saying goodnight to Mrs. Stacy before locking up. Beardsley Castle in Little Falls, New York, stands as a brooding testament to Gothic architecture. Perched atop a hill overlooking the Mohawk River, built in the 1860s as a private mansion, its turrets, stone facade, and arched windows give it the appearance of a castle lifted from the pages of a dark fairy tale. Over the decades, it has changed hands numerous times, surviving fires, financial ruin, and even violent deaths. Today, it operates as a restaurant, welcoming diners into its lavish high-ceilinged halls. But for all the grandeur and elegance, there is a sense here that history has left more than memories behind. Visitors to Beardsley Castle often remark that it feels alive in a way that goes beyond its architecture. Shadows stretch oddly across the stone walls, and the corners of the dining room seem darker than the light should allow. Patrons have reported seeing figures moving behind the tower windows, dark silhouettes that vanish if you approach. Some describe the sensation of being watched, a prickling awareness that unseen eyes are following them across the room. Waitstaff call it the castle's presence, a quiet, almost imperceptible energy that seems to inhabit every hallway, every nook of the massive building. The castle's reputation for the supernatural is well earned. Its history is filled with tragedy. Fires have ravaged its upper floors more than once, leaving behind charred timbers and smoke-stained walls that can still be smelled faintly on certain nights. Murders and mysterious deaths punctuate its past, the most infamous being a violent family feud in the early 20th century that ended in bloodshed and rumors of curses. Tales of madness are whispered in hushed tones, the story of an owner who claimed he could hear voices speaking from the basement, and who later took his own life in the castle's tower. These events seem to have left echoes in the building itself, a sense that the walls remember and the shadows never leave. Some of the most unnerving encounters happen in the basement. Once storage and servants' quarters, the area now functions as a wine cellar and prep space. Chefs working late have reported pots and pans flying from shelves with no one nearby. One cook, who had been chopping vegetables for dinner service, described hearing a low, malevolent laugh echoing through the stone corridors just before a stack of saucepans tumbled to the floor. Startled beyond belief, he quit on the spot and never returned. Another worker described the sensation of being lightly touched on the shoulder by a force that carried no weight, as if the past had reached out to remind them of its presence. The dining rooms themselves are not immune to the castle's haunting. Guests occasionally hear soft footsteps when no one is walking, or the faint clinking of silverware coming from empty tables. Chairs sometimes shift as though someone unseen has just risen, and wineglasses tremble, filling the air with a subtle ringing that cannot be explained by vibrations or drafts. Some diners report feeling a chill at a table, the temperature dropping suddenly as if an unseen guest has seated themselves across from them. Then there are the tower windows. From the outside, they appear picturesque, framing the Mohawk River like a painting. But inside, patrons often feel uneasy when glancing toward them. Shadowy figures have been seen moving behind the panes, standing perfectly still before vanishing. One couple, dining near the fireplace, recalled a shape leaning out from the highest turret, watching silently before retreating into the darkness. No one has ever reported seeing a face, only the suggestion of presence a figure outlined against the moonlight, quietly observing the living below. Even the sounds of the castle are unnerving. Disembodied laughter echoes through hallways late at night, often accompanied by the creaking of floorboards in spaces known to be empty. Some visitors have heard whispers that seem to come from behind closed doors or beneath floorboards. On rare occasions, staff have reported faint music drifting through the corridors, as if an unseen piano or violin were playing a tune from a bygone era. The melodies are never complete, always breaking off suddenly, leaving a ringing silence that feels heavier than the laughter or footsteps themselves. Paranormal investigators have visited the castle over the years, recording unexplained phenomena on video and audio equipment. Footage sometimes shows shadowy movements along the walls, while audio devices capture soft whispers or laughter that cannot be attributed to any human source. One investigator recalled the sensation of standing in a grand dining hall, feeling a weight at his back, as if someone unseen had taken a seat behind him. When he turned, there was no one, yet the feeling persisted. Despite its dark history, Beardsley Castle thrives as a restaurant. Patrons flock for the atmosphere, the architecture, and the culinary offerings, but many admit that part of the experience is tinged with fear and fascination. Dining here is never simply about food. Every meal feels like an audience with history itself, a brush with the shadows that have lingered for over a century. The clatter of cutlery, the rustle of silk dresses, the distant echoes of laughter all carry the impression that the dead are present, quietly observing, perhaps even participating in the ritual of the meal. Staff learn to respect the unseen guests. They speak of the castle with reverence, warning newcomers not to mock the building's past or dismiss the tales of haunting. Those who do often experience unexplainable disturbances, doors that slam unexpectedly, lights flickering, objects moving on their own. Long-term employees describe it as coexistence rather than fear, an understanding that the spirits are part of the castle's identity. In the end, Beardsley Castle offers more than fine dining or architectural beauty. It offers an encounter with history that refuses to rest. Fires, murders, madness, and sorrow have left an indelible mark on the building, shaping a presence that is felt in every corner, from the shadowy tower windows to the stone cellar where pots once flew. Guests who walk its halls leave with more than memories of cuisine. They leave with the knowledge that here, the past is never truly past, and the dead dine alongside the living, ever present in a Gothic castle that has survived both time and tragedy. The Old Bermuda Inn, perched on Staten Island, is a colonial-era treasure whose weathered brick walls and timbered beams echo centuries of history. Built long before the nation declared independence, the inn has been a witness to wars, celebrations, and countless everyday moments. Today, it serves as a restaurant, welcoming locals and tourists alike to dine beneath low-hanging chandeliers and among antiques that speak of an earlier America. But beneath its charming facade, the Old Bermuda Inn holds a story of heartbreak and longing, one that seems never to have ended. The most famous presence in the inn is the ghost of Martha, a woman whose life was forever altered by the Revolutionary War. According to legend, Martha was a young colonial woman in love with a local soldier, a man who pledged to fight for the nascent nation. Their romance was tender and full of promise, yet tragically cut short. Her lover never returned from the front lines, lost in one of the many battles that marked New York during the war. Distraught, Martha spent her remaining years within the inn, often standing by the staircase that overlooked the main hall, waiting in vain for him to come home. When she died, her spirit never left, tethered to the place where her love and grief were strongest. Visitors to the Old Bermuda Inn often report sightings of a woman in white, gliding silently near the staircase. She is always dressed in a flowing gown, her hair neatly pinned as if she had stepped from a portrait of the 18th century. Witnesses say she moves with grace, pausing now and then to look toward the door, as though expecting someone. She does not speak, nor does she appear threatening. Instead, there is a profound sense of longing about her presence, a sadness that fills the air like the faintest whisper of a forgotten song. It is not just visual sightings that make Martha's presence known. Her perfume is said to linger long after she disappears, a subtle, sweet fragrance that drifts through the dining rooms and hallways. Guests have described catching the scent unexpectedly, when no flowers or candles are present, only to realize that the air has grown inexplicably cold, or that a chair nearby has shifted slightly. Some have claimed it's the faintest acknowledgement of her spirit, a gentle signature left behind to mark her passing. Even wedding parties, who often choose the old Bermuda Inn for its historic charm, report unexplained phenomena. When love songs play during the reception, lights flicker above the dance floor, sometimes dimming and brightening in rhythm with the music. Servers have quietly joked among themselves that Martha seems to approve of enduring love, sending small acknowledgments from beyond. Couples say the air becomes warmer in certain corners, or that they feel the brush of a hand at their back as they move across the floor. A silent nod from a grieving heart that has watched centuries pass. The inn's architecture only adds to the ethereal experience. The main staircase, where Martha is most often seen, is wide and gently curving, leading from the dining hall to the upper rooms. Its banister, polished from decades of hands brushing it, creaks under the weight of invisible footsteps. Chandeliers hang low, their candlelight lights flickering without cause, casting long shadows that sometimes appear to stretch and move of their own accord. Antique mirrors in the hallway have captured ghostly shapes in photographs, a shimmer of white at the edges of the frame that cannot be explained by reflection alone. Staff members have learned to respect her presence. New servers are advised not to run, shout, or make jokes near the staircase, as Martha's energy seems particularly sensitive to disruptions. Experienced employees say that if they speak softly, move calmly, and treat the inn with reverence, the activity is gentler. Slight brushing of the gown along the floor, the scent of perfume, the faintest rustle of movement. Those who ignore the unspoken rules have reported sudden cold drafts, doors closing on their own, or dishes rattling in the kitchen. Guests who stay overnight in the inn's private rooms also encounter her. One family recalled waking to see a figure in white standing at the foot of their bed, then slowly moving down the hall and vanishing into the shadows. Another couple reported that, during the night, they heard soft sobbing near the staircase. Though unsettling at first, both said the experience left a curious comfort, as if Martha's presence was a reminder of love that endured beyond death. Some historians believe that Martha's attachment to the inn is tied not only to her lost love but also to the Revolutionary War itself. Staten Island was a site of skirmishes, occupation, and uncertainty. Many who lived there during the 18th century were caught between loyalty, fear, and heartbreak. Martha's grief, compounded by loss and upheaval, may have created a spiritual tether, binding her to the place she knew and loved. In this sense, the inn itself is a vessel for memory, holding the echoes of lives that passed through its halls, particularly the life of one woman whose devotion never faded. Even casual diners often sense her presence without realizing why. A sudden chill, a faint shimmer at the edge of vision, a soft creak from the staircase. These fleeting moments leave impressions that linger. Many leave with the subtle feeling that someone has watched over them, silently guiding their experience. For those who know the story, it is a bittersweet encounter. Martha's sorrow is tangible, yet there is warmth in her attentiveness, a testament to love that refuses to be forgotten. Today, the old Bermuda Inn continues to thrive, offering guests the charm of colonial architecture, fine dining, and an atmosphere steeped in history. But the allure goes beyond the food and the decor. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, every soft waft of perfume reminds visitors that history here is not inert. It moves, it watches, and it remembers. The Vineyard Restaurant in Rochester is a charming destination for locals and tourists alike. Housed in a stately 19th-century residence, its brick exterior and ivy-clad walls promise an elegant dining experience. Guests stroll through the main dining room, admire the antique furnishings, and savor fine cuisine, unaware that beneath their feet lies a history darker than the polished floors suggest. For while the vineyard delights the senses, it also holds a secret buried deep in its cellar, a secret that has refused to remain silent. The story begins during renovations undertaken in the late 20th century. The owners, seeking to modernize the kitchen and expand storage, descended into the restaurant's cellar, a cool, stone-lined space that had long been used for wine and food storage. It was here, behind a false wall, that workers uncovered a hidden cache, human bones, arranged almost ritualistically, decades, if not centuries old. The discovery shocked everyone involved, and archaeologists were called to examine the remains. Yet despite attempts to identify the skeletons, records were sparse, and no one could determine who they belonged to or why they had been hidden there. From the moment the bones were found, the restaurant seemed to take on a new personality. Staff began reporting unexplained phenomena almost immediately. Chandeliers swayed without any breeze or vibration. Workers claimed to hear soft footsteps pacing the cellar late at night, though, when they checked, the space was empty. Most unsettling of all was the voice, a woman's voice, trembling, sorrowful, sometimes crying outright. It seemed to drift from the deepest corners of the cellar, rising and falling as though calling out to someone who had long since vanished. The phenomena were not limited to the basement. Diners on the main floor occasionally heard the faint sounds of sobbing or a soft whisper that seemed to float through the air. Some felt sudden chills, small drafts brushing against their shoulders despite closed doors and sealed windows. Wine glasses trembled, silverware rattled, and candles flickered inexplicably. It was as though the restaurant itself had become a conduit for grief, channeling the anguish of a spirit unable to rest. One longtime server described her first encounter vividly. She had been preparing the dining room for the evening crowd when she felt the temperature drop sharply. Turning toward the cellar door, she thought she saw a pale figure standing in the shadows, barely visible, swaying as if trying to communicate. The figure vanished before she could call anyone, leaving only the lingering echo of a quiet sob. It was like she wanted to be remembered, the server said later, her voice trembling, like someone had forgotten her, and she needed someone to care. Chefs in the kitchen have had their own terrifying experiences. One claimed to have seen pots and pans lift from their hooks and crash to the floor without warning. Flames in the stovetop ovens sometimes leaped higher than they should, or extinguished abruptly, seemingly at the whim of an unseen hand. Many of the employees who experienced these events described a feeling of profound sadness, as if the presence in the cellar was less about anger and more about mourning a spirit bound by memory and longing. Attempts to investigate the source of the haunting yielded little clarity. Paranormal teams visiting the restaurant recorded EVP's electronic voice, phenomena capturing faint whispers that sounded like a woman calling a name, though none of the investigators could discern exactly what was said. Thermal imaging occasionally revealed cold spots and shadowy shapes in the cellar, confirming what the staff had long suspected, that someone or something still lingered down there. Yet despite repeated efforts to give the spirit peace, nothing seemed to satisfy her. The bones remained in the cellar, untouched, as though leaving them in place was somehow necessary to honor her memory. The identity of the woman remains a mystery. No historical records point to whose remains were discovered, or why they were hidden beneath the restaurant. Some speculate she may have been a victim of domestic violence or an unfortunate servant who met an untimely death. Others suggest a more sinister explanation, that she might have been a murder victim whose killer buried her in secret. Whatever the truth, her presence is unmistakable. Employees have come to refer to her simply as the woman in the cellar, a mournful guardian of forgotten history. Guests often feel her presence without realizing why. Couples dining in the intimate spaces near the wine racks have reported feeling as though someone is standing nearby, unseen yet attentive. The faint perfume of flowers or damp earth sometimes drifts through the air, followed by a quiet, echoing sigh. Candles flicker without wind, and the shadows along the walls seem to bend and shift as if shaping themselves into a form just out of reach. For many, these subtle occurrences are unsettling yet oddly poignant, a reminder that history is never truly gone. Even special occasions are touched by her unseen hand. During wedding receptions or anniversary dinners, staff have noticed lights flickering unexpectedly, sometimes in rhythm with music that evokes love and nostalgia. It's as if the woman acknowledges these moments of joy, silently participating in the celebration while her own story remains incomplete. Patrons often leave with a lingering sense that they have dined in a place where life and death intermingle, where past sorrows are quietly honored by a presence that refuses to be ignored. The Vineyard restaurant continues to operate, balancing its reputation as a fine dining establishment with the weight of its haunted history. Patrons come for the food, the ambiance, and the charm of a 19th century building steeped in character. But for those who sense it, every meal carries an added dimension. Every crash of glass, flicker of candlelight, and whisper from below is a reminder that some histories are not meant to be forgotten, that some souls wait patiently for acknowledgement. O'Connell's Pub in Albany, New York, has long been a staple of the city's nightlife. By day, it is cheerful and bustling, filled with the scent of hearty Irish stews, the laughter of friends gathered around worn wooden tables, and the faint clink of pint glasses. The walls are decorated with memorabilia from Ireland-old photographs, vintage signs, and Celtic knots that evoke the homeland for those who call it their heritage, and intrigue for those who do not. Patrons come for the food, the music, and the warm atmosphere. But as night falls, the pub's cheerful demeanor seems to shift. A subtle, unsettling energy takes hold, one that hints that the past is never entirely gone. The stories surrounding O'Connell's Pub center on the back room and the narrow staircase leading to the upper floor. According to longtime staff, these areas are the most active when the crowd thins and the last few pints are served. Bartenders frequently report hearing voices where no one is present, murmured conversations, the faint murmur of laughter, and occasional sobs echoing from behind the locked doors. Sometimes, the laughter that fills the pub during busy evenings takes on an uneasy, hollow quality as it drifts toward the corners of the building. It is as if unseen ears are listening, and the walls themselves have absorbed centuries of sound. The staircase is another hotspot for supernatural activity. It leads to a part of the building that is no longer open to the public, yet footsteps are often heard climbing and descending long after the last customer has left. Staff who venture upstairs alone claim they can hear the soft scrape of shoes against worn wood, sometimes accompanied by a faint sigh or the creak of a door swinging open. When approached, the sounds vanish, leaving only the silence of the empty building and the lingering scent of beer and polished wood. The ghost most often associated with these occurrences is said to be a former owner of the pub, a man who lived and died within these walls. Legend has it that he was a dedicated and meticulous bartender, a man who took pride in every pint poured and every patron served. His death was tragic, and some say it was sudden, a heart attack during a particularly busy night, or perhaps an accident that occurred after closing. Whatever the circumstances, his presence seems to have lingered, a spectral overseer committed to ensuring that the pub continues to operate with the same care and attention he demanded in life. Staff who have worked late-night shifts describe him as a quiet but constant companion. Glasses are occasionally nudged back into place, bar stools return to their proper spots, and taps are sometimes left running just slightly open, as if the unseen hand wants to make sure the flow of beer is perfect. One bartender recalled preparing a tray of pints and feeling the faint brush of a hand along his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there, but the tray had shifted slightly, as though someone had adjusted it with care. Others have noticed items moving inexplicably, the cash register drawer clicking open, napkins sliding across counters, and even the occasional ale mug rattling on the shelf. None of it is violent or frightening. Rather, it carries a tone of oversight, a meticulous attention to detail. The back room of the pub seems particularly haunted. Employees report hearing muffled conversation, the shuffle of chairs, and even the sound of a piano or fiddle playing softly in the corner. On quiet nights, when the doors are locked and the lights dimmed, these sounds become more pronounced. One evening, a server walking past a room heard a soft voice whisper, "Check the taps." She paused, heart racing, but when she entered, the room was empty. Other staff have heard the faint echo of Irish songs drifting from the back room, songs that no living person was playing. Some speculate that the former owner enjoys a quiet drink, reminiscing about the evenings he spent tending the bar, ensuring that the pub runs smoothly, even in his absence. Guests have occasionally experienced subtle interactions as well. Regulars who stay late sometimes feel a brush of cold air, hear soft footsteps behind them, or catch the sense of someone standing near the bar, watching the pour of a pint. Patrons have reported their glasses tipping slightly on their own, or the chair across from them shifting, even when no one else is present. Some have described feeling a presence settle beside them, as if joining in the camaraderie and laughter, yet remaining invisible. For those who have experienced it, the sensation is more eerie than terrifying, like sharing the space with someone who is both protective and persistent. Despite the supernatural activity, O'Connell's pub thrives. Staff and patrons alike have grown accustomed to the strange occurrences, often laughing them off as quirks of a historic building. Some employees jokingly leave a small pour of beer by the back room or on the bar near the staircase, saying it is for the ghostly former owner, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. Regulars claim the pub has a spiritual charm, a presence that ensures the beer is always poured just right and the atmosphere remains lively and welcoming. The building itself seems to feed the spectral activity, with its worn wooden floors, low-hanging beams, and narrow staircases. It has a presence of its own. The walls are thick, absorbing sound and energy, and the shadows cast by lanterns and chandeliers often appear to move of their own accord. Mirrors along the walls sometimes reflect fleeting shapes that vanish when approached, and even the flicker of candlelight seems to accentuate the sense that the pub is watched from beyond. For those who have worked or spent long evenings in the pub, the former owner is not a source of fear, but rather a quiet overseer, ghostly bartender who continues his duties beyond the grave. He watches over the taps, the patrons, and the staff, ensuring that O'Connell's pub maintains the quality and charm that made it a local institution. His laughter, soft footsteps, and gentle presence are reminders of a man dedicated to his craft and a place he clearly loved. The Glenn Sanders Mansion restaurant in Scotia, New York, is more than just a fine dining establishment. It is a living testament to centuries of history. Built in 1713, the mansion has witnessed colonial warfare, family triumphs, and heartbreaks that span generations. Its stately walls, low-beamed ceilings, and large mullioned windows overlook the Mohawk River, offering a view that has inspired diners for decades. Yet beneath the polished tables and crystal chandeliers lies a history that is far darker and far more personal than most visitors realize. For within its halls resides a presence, a lingering spirit known to staff and some patrons as Sarah. Sarah's story begins during the tumultuous years of colonial conflict. She was the wife of a local soldier, a man who marched off to war with promises of return and devotion. During his absence, Sarah spent her days in the mansion, keeping the home in order and waiting for news. Her life, once filled with love and expectation, became dominated by worry and longing. The war was brutal, the communication slow, and fear constant. Tragically, her husband never came home, lost in battle along the Mohawk River. Sarah's grief was profound, and some accounts suggest she died of a broken heart, unable to bear the absence of the man she loved. Guests today occasionally see her apparition, a pale figure in a flowing dress, gazing longingly out the windows toward the river. The sight is always fleeting when approached. She vanishes like mist. Yet the impression she leaves lingers. Some patrons have described the feeling of being watched, as if her sorrow and vigilance stretch across the centuries, reaching out to anyone who dares to dine within her home. Servers and staff have learned to respect her presence, quietly acknowledging that the mansion is not theirs alone. During storms, the mansion's energy seems to intensify. Guests seated near windows or along the dining room walls often notice plates and glasses trembling, as though invisible hands have brushed them. The chandeliers sway subtly, casting flickering shadows that dance across the walls. It is not violent or malicious. Rather, it carries the weight of longing, as if Sarah is attempting to manifest her grief in the only way she can, making the living aware of her presence and the history embedded within the mansion's walls. Staff frequently share stories of their own encounters. One server recounted stacking glasses after a busy dinner, only to hear the clatter of them being shifted, as though an invisible hand had moved them into place. Another spoke of catching a glimpse of a woman's figure reflected in the window, standing near the dining area, staring toward the Mohawk River. When he turned to look, the figure had disappeared. Even chefs have reported hearing soft footsteps in the empty hallways, accompanied by the faint rustle of skirts, a sound that mirrors the domestic routines of the 18th century. Sarah's presence is not confined to visual sightings. A subtle fragrance is often reported, a mixture of fresh linens and floral notes, seemingly accompanying her apparition. Some guests and staff interpret this as a sign of her lingering care, an echo of the life she once led while tending to her home and awaiting her husband's return. Others say the sensation is both calming and melancholic, a sensory connection to a time when love and loss were inseparable. The mansion itself seems attuned to her emotion. On quiet evenings, the air sometimes grows inexplicably cold in her direction, and the curtains near the river windows flutter gently as if caught in a breeze that exists only for her. Mirrors occasionally reflect fleeting shapes at their edges, shadows that vanish when directly observed. Staff have come to recognize these subtleties as Sarah's presence, a way for her to interact with the living without disturbing them, a silent expression of her eternal vigil. Guests have occasionally felt her near during private dinners or celebrations. One couple reported that, as they toasted to their anniversary, a chandelier above them swayed slightly, and a nearby window rattled, though the weather was calm. Another diner noted a faint whisper, almost like a sigh, that seemed to respond to the clinking of glasses. These small, inexplicable occurrences are part of the mansion's charm and eeriness, reminders that history is not just preserved in photographs or antiques, but lives on in the energy of those who have passed. The staff have affectionately named her Sarah, giving identity to the presence that has lingered for centuries. While she is a ghost, there is no malevolence in her actions. She does not scare diners intentionally. She does not move objects with force or threaten those who enter. Instead, her activity is subtle, personal, and sorrowful, a reflection of a life interrupted by war and a love left unfulfilled. Employees have learned to leave small gestures of respect, a candle lit near the windows, a neatly arranged table, a quiet word acknowledging her vigilance. These gestures, they say, seem to soften the energy in the mansion, allowing both the living and the spirit to coexist peacefully. Paranormal investigators have visited the Glenn Sanders mansion over the years, documenting temperature fluctuations, electronic voice phenomena, and faint recordings of weeping or murmured words. While some dismiss these findings, staff and regular guests know that Sarah's presence is real, felt in every creaking floorboard, every shifting shadow, and every subtle tremor in the glassware during storms. She is a reminder that the mansion is not only a restaurant or a historic site, it is a home that has seen love, loss, and devotion that transcends time. Today, the Glenn Sanders Mansion continues to welcome guests from near and far, offering a dining experience steeped in elegance, history, and the faint traces of the past. Patrons enjoy fine cuisine, warm ambience, and a scenic view of the Mohawk River, often unaware of the woman who gazes at them from the windows, watching, waiting, and remembering. For those who sense her presence, every dinner becomes more than a meal. It becomes a connection to a story of love lost to war, grief that endures, and a spirit named Sarah, who remains forever tethered to the home where her heart still waits. The Adelphi Hotel in Saratoga Springs, New York, has long been a symbol of elegance and grandeur. Built in the 19th century, the hotel's architecture reflects the opulence of the Victorian era, with ornate moldings, glittering chandeliers, and polished wood floors that gleam under the soft light. Its restaurant, once a gathering place for the city's elite, continues to attract visitors seeking refined dining and a taste of history. Yet, for all its beauty, the Adelphi carries echoes of tragedy that linger quietly among the tables and mirrors, whispers from a past that refuses to fade. The most famous presence in the restaurant is that of a Victorian woman, said to have died within the hotel during the 1800s. Details about her life remain scarce, but her story has survived through staff accounts and local legend. She was reportedly a refined and elegant figure, known for her beauty and poise. Her death was sudden and mysterious. Some say illness. Others suggest a heartbreak too profound to bear but in life. She frequented the hotel and the adjoining restaurant. After her passing, it is said that her spirit remained tethered to the place where she once dined, socialized, and lived her final days. Guests today occasionally catch glimpses of her, though always fleeting. She is often seen near the grand mirrors that line the walls of the restaurant, a spectral figure in Victorian attire. Her reflection appears delayed, moving slightly after the patrons it should mimic, her lips seemingly whispering in a conversation that no one else can hear. Staff report the unnerving sensation of her presence behind them, a quiet energy that observes but does not harm. Those who notice her often describe a feeling of being watched by someone both sorrowful and dignified, as if she is waiting for the world to remember her. Phantom sounds accompany her appearances. The soft notes of piano music occasionally drift through the dining room, though no instrument has been played. It is an old, delicate tune, reminiscent of Victorian parlors where she might have spent her afternoons. Some diners hear this music while sipping wine or enjoying dessert, only to realize that no source can be found. The melody rises and falls, filling the space with a haunting sweetness that lingers long after the last note has faded. Under the chandeliers, whispers sometimes join the music's soft conversations that seem intimate, polite, and just beyond comprehension, as if she continues dialogues left unfinished. Staff members have learned to recognize the subtle signs of her presence. Silverware might shift slightly on the tables, chairs sometimes scrape the floor as if someone unseen has just risen, and the temperature in certain corners of the room can drop suddenly, giving diners a fleeting chill. One server recounted a moment when she turned to fetch a tray and saw a figure in white near the far wall, staring toward the mirror. When she blinked, the figure was gone, but the sensation of being observed remained. "It's never threatening," she explained, "just sad, like she's still part of the life she once lived here." The mirrors themselves are central to the haunting. Patrons have reported that their reflections occasionally lag behind their movements or seem to be accompanied by another figure, a shadow that mimics gestures a moment too late. This phenomenon is particularly noticeable during quiet hours, when the restaurant is dimly lit and the polished glass surfaces reflect the flickering candlelight. Some claim to have seen her lean closer to the mirror, as if addressing someone on the other side, lips moving in silent words that remain forever unheard. Diners are not always frightened. Many find the experiences oddly beautiful. The music, the whispered conversations, the flickering candlelight, these elements create an atmosphere of nostalgia and mystery. Couples often remark on the romantic melancholy that seems to permeate the room, while history enthusiasts are drawn to the sense of living history embedded in every shadow and reflection. Even children have reported noticing a pale figure in a flowing dress, peeking from behind the mirrors or walking silently along the edges of the room, though they often interpret her as a gentle, almost protective presence. The Adelphi's haunting is subtle yet persistent. It does not manifest through violent outbursts or terrifying apparitions, but through small, persistent signs that the past is never far away. Glasses sometimes tip, faint creaks echo through the floorboards, and the delicate scent of Victorian perfume is occasionally noticed in the air, a fragrance that seems impossible to place in the modern building. Staff have learned to treat these moments with quiet respect, acknowledging the presence without fear, and leaving small gestures like setting a chair straight or lighting an extra candle to honor her silent vigilance. Even special events are touched by her influence. During anniversary dinners, piano music seems to swell unexpectedly, or the faintest whisper can be heard as if commenting on the celebration. Some guests believe that the Victorian woman lingers to witness love, her spirit connected to the human experience she cherished in life. Though no one knows her name with certainty, she has become part of the narrative of the Adelphi, a living ghost whose story is told through her lingering energy. Paranormal researchers have visited the Adelphi restaurant, documenting unexplained temperature drops, photographic anomalies, and faint audio of whispering voices. While skeptics dismiss these findings, Staff and loyal patrons agree that something beyond the ordinary inhabits the space. She is a presence that commands attention without demanding it, a ghostly observer whose life and death continue to interact with the living world in subtle, haunting ways. Dining at the Adelphi is more than a culinary experience. It is a connection to the past. The chandeliers, mirrors, and polished wood floors carry centuries of memory. And the Victorian woman who haunts them is a living reminder of love, elegance, and loss. Each note of phantom piano music, every flicker of movement in the mirrors, every whisper under the chandeliers is a testament to her enduring presence. Patrons leave with more than a full meal. They carry the sense that they have shared a space with history, with someone who remains ever present, silently watching, whispering, and waiting. The Black Horse Tavern in Minden, New York, stands as a testament to early American history. Built in 1805, its weathered stone walls and low-beamed ceilings evoke a time when the country was young, and travelers relied on taverns like this one for shelter, warmth, and a hot meal. Situated along what was once a busy thoroughfare for stagecoaches and soldiers, the tavern has seen countless patrons pass through its doors, some left with stories and memories, but others, according to local legend, never left at all. Their presence lingers, etched into the very fabric of the building, and manifests in ways both subtle and unnerving. By day, the Black Horse Tavern is charming and rustic, filled with the scent of roasted meats, baked bread, and the earthy aroma of polished wood. Guests enjoy hearty meals at long wooden tables, sharing laughter and conversation beneath chandeliers that glow softly in the warm light. Yet, as night descends, the atmosphere shifts. Patrons and staff alike report a sense of being watched, as though the walls themselves are alive with echoes from another era. Shadows stretch longer, the temperature dips inexplicably, and the sounds of the past seem to seep into the present. The most active parts of the tavern are the long hallway and the upstairs rooms, which have retained their original layout. Servers recount hearing boots stomping across the floorboards late at night, though no one is present. The sound is deliberate and heavy, echoing as if a group of soldiers were marching through the tavern on patrol. Doors slam suddenly, and windows rattle without any wind to explain the movement. The sounds are unmistakably human, yet impossible to trace, leaving staff with an uneasy sense that the building is alive with the footsteps of those who have passed through centuries ago. Voices are another hallmark of the tavern's hauntings. Patrons report hearing conversations in 18th century accents, heated debates that end abruptly when anyone investigates. One waitress described hearing two voices arguing over what seemed to be a ration of food, their tones sharp but muted by the years. Others have heard the low murmur of a woman reciting prayers, followed by a man's chuckle, as if the tavern's old patrons are reenacting their routines long after death. The dialogue is often difficult to discern, but carries a weight of authenticity, making listeners feel as if they have stepped directly into another century. The most startling incident, however, involved the sound of a musket firing. A server who had been cleaning the dining room late one evening described hearing a sharp report echo through the empty hallway. It was unmistakable, the crack of gunpowder and wood reverberating off the walls. Heart pounding, she ran to the source, only to find no weapon, no one. Nothing but the polished floor and shadows cast by candlelight. She later realized that the sound perfectly mimicked musket fire from the Revolutionary era, suggesting that the tavern itself may preserve not just the echoes of voices, but the memories of battle and conflict. Local lore provides some context for the hauntings. The tavern's location along old travel routes meant that soldiers, merchants, and settlers regularly sought refuge within its walls. During the Revolutionary War and subsequent conflicts, it was a resting place for troops. Many travelers fell ill or met untimely ends, never departing the tavern alive. Some were buried nearby, while others vanished without record. Guests often feel the presence of the past even without witnessing clear apparitions. Cold spots drift across tables where diners sit. The flicker of lantern light seems to bend and twist unnaturally, and shadows sometimes stretch or move against the grain of the walls. Glasses occasionally tremble, chairs scrape slightly, and a faint smell of smoke and gunpowder wafts unexpectedly through the air. These small, eerie signs are enough to make even the most rational visitor pause, sensing that they are sharing space with the spirits of those long gone. Staff have developed ways of coexisting with the hauntings. Many speak softly of the old soldiers or the travelers who never left, acknowledging their presence without fear. Some leave small, token-polished boots left by the heart, a candle lit in the hallway, or extra care in setting the table's gestures that staff believe honor the spirits and ease their restless energy. Most employees report that when the tavern is treated with respect, the disturbances are gentler soft footsteps, faint murmurs, and brief glimpses of figures in period attire. Disrespect or hurried activity seems to stir the past more strongly, with louder knocks, sharper bangs, and more pronounced footsteps echoing through the empty spaces. Guests have had their own encounters. One couple staying in the upstairs rooms reported hearing heavy boots pacing above them, followed by a door slamming shut. Another diner felt a cold hand brush against her shoulder near the fireplace, and when she turned, no one was there. Children are particularly sensitive to the presence, often pointing to corners of the room or staircases and speaking to invisible companions. Many patrons leave with stories of sounds, sights, or sensations that defy explanation, forming a shared tapestry of experience that keeps the tavern's legends alive. Despite the supernatural activity, the Black Horse Tavern thrives as both a restaurant and a historical site. Patrons come for the rustic charm, hearty meals, and the sense of stepping back in time. The building's history is celebrated in the decor, menu, and atmosphere, but the ghostly echoes add a dimension that is palpable and unforgettable. Diners feel they are not simply eating in an old tavern, they are sharing a space with the past, participating in a living memory of a time when travelers sought warmth, soldiers rested, and life was uncertain. The Aurora Inn, perched on the shores of Seneca Lake in Aurora, New York, is a place of serene beauty and timeless elegance. Its sprawling verandas offer breathtaking views of the water, and the restaurant's warm, inviting interior has long attracted travelers seeking fine dining in a historic setting. Guests marvel at the polished wood floors, antique furnishings, and the way sunlight filters through large mullioned windows during the day. But as the sun sets and darkness settles over the lake, the inn takes on a different character, one filled with quiet whispers, fleeting shadows, and the lingering presence of those who have never truly left. The most commonly reported apparition is that of a spectral bride. Guests and staff alike describe seeing a woman in a flowing white gown wandering the veranda, her gaze fixed on the water as though searching for someone who never returned. Her presence is fleeting. She appears for only a moment before vanishing into thin air, leaving behind a cold breeze and a faint scent of flowers. Many visitors first notice her reflection in the glass doors leading to the veranda, pale figure whose movements do not match their own. The image is mesmerizing and unnerving at the same time, a glimpse of a love story frozen in time. Alongside the bride, a man in old-fashioned clothing is said to appear, often standing just outside the windows of the restaurant. Patrons have reported glimpsing him, watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable, his posture rigid and formal. Some believe he may have been a guest or owner from a previous century, still tied to the inn by unfinished business or lingering devotion. Unlike the bride, his presence feels more deliberate, as if he is observing the living, silently assessing the world that has moved on without him. The upper floors of the inn are especially active after dark. Staff report hearing footsteps echoing along corridors where no one is allowed after hours. Sometimes the sounds are heavy and measured, like the pacing of someone deep in thought. Other times they are quick and erratic, as if startled by an unseen visitor. Doors open and close without explanation, and chairs are occasionally nudged as if someone invisible is adjusting them. Housekeeping staff have described feeling a sudden chill when entering the hallways, as though a presence is following them, silently watching their every move. Guests often experience subtle interactions that cannot be explained. A wine glass left on a table may tip slightly, or a napkin may flutter as though caught by a breeze that exists only in that moment. Patrons seated near the veranda sometimes feel the brush of cool air against their arms, only to look up and see that the doors are firmly closed. Others report hearing soft whispers, barely audible over the quiet murmur of conversation, often coming from the direction of the upper floor. These occurrences, while gentle and sometimes enchanting, create an undercurrent of unease, reminder that the Aurora Inn is as much a place of spirits as it is of living guests. Staff members have grown accustomed to the unusual activity and speak of the ghosts with a mixture of respect and familiarity. They call the bride Emily, though her true identity remains a mystery, and the man in the window is referred to simply as the gentleman. Employees have learned to move with care, leaving small gestures of acknowledgement, a candle left burning in a hallway, a chair placed neatly beside a table, or a polite nod toward the veranda. They believe these gestures calm the spirits and maintain a peaceful coexistence between the living and the unseen. The inn's history provides context for the hauntings built during the 19th century. It served as a retreat for wealthy travelers who sought respite by the lake. Over the decades, it has witnessed countless weddings, social gatherings by the water. Some stories suggest the bride met a tragic end, perhaps on her wedding day or shortly thereafter, leaving her spirit tethered to the place where she hoped to begin a new life. The gentleman, some believe, may have been a suitor, a guardian, or even an owner who lived long before the modern inn opened its doors to diners. Their stories, though fragmented, merge into the living history of the building, blending sorrow, love, and longing. Even during busy evenings, the supernatural presence makes itself known. While patrons converse and dine, the faint echo of footsteps from above can be heard. Sometimes silverware rattles or the piano in the lounge seems to play a note out of rhythm, as if someone is attempting to join the music from another time. Mirrors occasionally reflect movements that do not correspond to any living person, and shadows along the walls sometimes stretch or twist in ways that defy explanation. These phenomena are never violent, but they are persistent. A reminder that the inn is more than just a scenic location. It is a vessel for memory and emotion. Guests who encounter the bride or the gentleman often leave with a lingering impression of the inn that goes beyond its aesthetic charm. Some describe a profound sense of nostalgia, as if they have glimpsed a world that existed before their time. Others feel a subtle melancholy, the weight of a love or life cut short yet refusing to fade completely. Couples, in particular, remark on the poignancy of the experience, noting the romantic and tragic undertones that seem to hover over the veranda and along the quiet upper floors. Paranormal researchers have visited the Aurora in recording unexplained temperature drops, faint whispers, and occasional visual anomalies in photographs. While skeptics debate the authenticity of these experiences, staff and many returning guests agree that the inn is undeniably haunted. Emily and the gentleman are not malevolent. They do not harm or frighten intentionally. Instead, they observe, linger, and remind those who enter that some stories refuse to end, that some spirits remain tethered to the places they loved most in life. The Iron Door Tavern in Buffalo, New York, is not just a place to enjoy a cold drink and hearty fare. It is a place where history and the supernatural converge. Its dimly lit interior, heavy wooden beams, and brick walls give the tavern a sense of age and gravitas, as if every surface holds the memory of countless conversations, disputes, and celebrations. Patrons are drawn to its rustic charm, but many quickly realize that the tavern carries an energy far beyond the ordinary. There is a weight in the air, a subtle tension that suggests something or someone is watching, quietly observing every movement behind the bar and along the worn floorboards. The tavern's most famous legend centers on a man who died violently within its walls. Decades ago, during a late-night altercation over drinks and pride, a fight broke out that would leave one patron dead. Details of the incident are murky, but the story persisted in the local community. He fell, never to rise again, his life cut short in a place that had long been a refuge for Buffalo residents. Since that day, it is said that his spirit never left. Anger, resentment, and the suddenness of his death are all thought to have bound him to the tavern, turning it into a hotspot for unexplained activity and eerie disturbances. Bottles of liquor often move without explanation. Patrons have seen them slide along shelves, as if nudged by an invisible hand. Chairs scrape against the wooden floors when no one is near, and empty mugs are occasionally found tipped over, their contents spilling onto the tables. These occurrences are not subtle enough to be ignored, yet they are never so violent as to endanger anyone. Instead, they carry the unmistakable energy of a restless presence, one that is frustrated, watchful, and deeply tied to the location where tragedy struck. Disembodied voices are a more unsettling aspect of the haunting. Staff and patrons alike report hearing low growls or murmurs coming from the bar area. Sometimes, the words are partially understandably shout, a warning, a grumble, but often they are incoherent, a guttural sound that seems to emanate from the very walls. Those who have experienced it describe the sensation as chilling, the voice close yet impossible to locate, resonating in the chest as much as in the ears. A bartender working late once swore he heard a deep, furious growl as he polished glasses, the sound rising from the bar itself. When he turned, no one was there, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The atmosphere is particularly intense on quiet nights. With only a few patrons scattered across the room, the tavern seems to thrum with unseen activity. Footsteps echo across the floors when the upper rooms are empty, and the clatter of objects falling or shifting occurs with uncanny timing. Staff have reported glasses nudged closer to the edge of tables, silverware rearranged, and chairs slightly moved as if a figure had just risen. The sense of being observed never fully leaves, an invisible gaze following servers as they move from table to table. It is a presence that cannot be ignored, yet one that is intangible, frustratingly elusive. The tavern's design may contribute to its reputation. Its dark corners, exposed beams, and narrow hallways create shadows that seem alive, and the low ceilings amplify even the faintest noise. When combined with the history of violence and tragedy, it is no surprise that the Iron Door Tavern feels charged with energy. Locals say that it is impossible to stay long without sensing the lingering spirit of the man who died. They're a presence that is not violent in intent, but assertive, demanding acknowledgement. Staff have learned to coexist with the unusual activity. They speak quietly of the angry patron or the man who never left, treating his presence as a fact of life in the tavern. Many have adopted routines that seem to appease the spirit, whether by leaving objects neatly arranged, speaking respectfully to the empty spaces, or simply acknowledging his presence as they pass through the bar area. Those who ignore these subtle rituals often report increased activity, louder crashes, sharper bangs, and more pronounced growls, as if the spirit reacts to disrespect. Guests, too, have felt the effects of the haunting. One man, enjoying a late-night drink alone, felt a sudden cold draft along his shoulder and heard a low rumble directly behind him. When he turned, the seat was empty, yet the sensation of a presence remained. Couples have reported similar experiences, glasses trembling, chairs shifting, or soft growls that seem to respond to their conversation. While frightening to some, these interactions are also a part of the tavern's character, giving it a history and personality that few modern establishments can match. Even during busy hours, the energy of the past is palpable. Patrons may not always notice the subtle movements and sounds amidst laughter and conversation, but the staff is attuned to them. They have grown skilled at distinguishing between the normal clatter of a busy tavern and the deliberate, precise disturbances that mark the presence of the angry spirit. These moments serve as a constant reminder that the Iron Door Tavern is more than a bar or a restaurant. It is a living record of history, both joyful and tragic, echoing across time. The legend of the Iron Door Tavern adds an irresistible allure for some visitors. History enthusiasts, thrill seekers, and paranormal investigators are drawn to the tavern's reputation, eager to witness the unexplained for themselves. Photographs occasionally capture shadows that seem out of place, and audio recordings have picked up low growls and unexplained noises that defy explanation. while skeptics attribute these occurrences to the building's age or natural acoustics. Those who have experienced the phenomena firsthand know that something unseen inhabits the space. The Roycroft Inn in East Aurora, New York, is a building steeped in the legacy of the arts and crafts movement, a place where creativity and craftsmanship once flourished. Established in the early 1900s as part of the Roycroft Artists' Colony, the inn was a haven for artisans, writers, and craftsmen who dedicated their lives to creating beauty in everyday objects. Today, the inn operates as a fine dining restaurant, welcoming visitors to its elegant halls with polished wood, antique furnishings, and a sense of refined history. But beneath the charm and sophistication lies a presence that has never truly left. Guests often report encounters with the inn's former residents, spirits who linger in the spaces they once filled with conversation, inspiration, and quiet reflection. Patrons frequently glimpse figures dressed in early 20th century attire moving through the dining hall. Others are seen wandering the halls, pausing to admire the architecture or glance at the intricate woodwork that still bears the imprint of the original craftsman. These apparitions are not frightening. They carry an air of calm dignity, as if the spirits are content to inhabit the inn quietly, observing the living while continuing their routines from a bygone era. One of the most common experiences reported by visitors is the faint sound of typewriter clicks. Even though the machines have been absent for decades, the rhythmic tapping of keys echoes softly throughout the dining room. The sound is delicate but distinct, stopping abruptly as soon as someone approaches, leaving only the faint scent of ink and aged paper lingering in the air. It is a reminder of the inn's creative past and the people whose hands shaped both objects and words here. Staff have become accustomed to the subtle activity that defines the Roycroft Inn. They speak of the gentle residents with a mixture of respect and familiarity, arranging tables carefully and moving through the halls with quiet acknowledgement of the unseen. Plates may rattle lightly or chairs scrape softly against the floor, as if someone invisible is settling into place. Candles flicker with no wind, and shadows stretch oddly along the walls, hinting at the presence of figures just out of reach. Staff have learned that these occurrences are not to be feared, but embraced, part of the living memory embedded in the building itself. Guests often describe a sense of intimacy when dining at the inn, a feeling that they are sharing a moment with the past. Couples sometimes notice a ghostly figure lingering near a corner table, watching over the room, while solo visitors feel the quiet companionship of a presence nearby, an echo of the artists and thinkers who once called this space home. The experience is subtle, fleeting, and deeply atmospheric, as if the inn itself has absorbed the creativity, conversation, and spirit of those who walked its halls a century ago. Even the decor reflects the lingering presence of the past. The handcrafted furniture, the intricate wood paneling, and the softly glowing lamps evoke the era of the Roycroft artists, creating an environment where the modern visitor feels transported through time. Combined with the sounds of unseen typewriters and the glimpses of ethereal patrons, the inn offers a dining experience that is both elegant and haunting. It is not merely a place to eat. It is a space where the history of craft, creativity, and human presence continues to be felt. A quiet but persistent reminder that some spirits never truly leave. The Caldwell House in Salisbury Mills, New York, is a historic inn with a story carved deep into the fabric of the Revolutionary War. Originally built in the 18th century, it served as a headquarters for officers and soldiers during the conflict that birthed a nation. Its thick stone walls, exposed beams, and low ceilings are more than architectural features. They are vessels of memory, echoing with the lives, fears, and ambitions of those who once walked its corridors. Today, the inn operates as a restaurant, offering guests a taste of colonial elegance alongside hearty fare. Yet behind its warm hearths and polished floors, the Caldwell House is alive with the presence of the past, a place where history refuses to stay buried. Many visitors report feeling a shift in atmosphere upon entering the dining area. The air feels heavy, dense with a sense of watchfulness. Tables sometimes tremble slightly, as if nudged by invisible elbows, and chairs scrape the floors when no one is seated nearby. Staff have described the sensation of being observed by unseen eyes, a quiet awareness that seems to follow them from room to room. These subtle disturbances are a hallmark of the inn, reminders that the lives once lived here have left echoes that cannot be erased. The most common spectral sightings involve soldiers from the Revolutionary era. Patrons have glimpsed figures in colonial uniforms wandering the grounds, often near the veranda or along the pathways outside the inn. They appear deliberate in their movements, pacing as if on duty, their expressions somber and focused. Some guests report hearing murmured conversations in languages of loyalty and duty, phrases that are impossible to understand yet carry unmistakable emotion. Loyalty, fear, grief. These voices are fleeting, drifting on the evening air like remnants of orders given long ago, leaving those who hear them with a sense of awe and unease. Inside, the presence of servants is also felt. Guests sometimes glimpse figures in period attire, carrying trays or moving silently between tables. At first, these glimpses seem like tricks of the light or reflections in the glass, but the consistency of the sightings and their vivid detail suggests something more. Staff have reported the faint clatter of utensils or the soft shuffle of feet along the floor, sounds that vanish the moment anyone investigates. Plates may tilt slightly, a cup may be nudged, and the subtle rearrangement of table settings seems intentional, as if the spirits are maintaining rituals of hospitality long after their time has passed. The Caldwell House's long history of military occupation contributes to the weight of its haunting. The inn was a strategic site during the Revolutionary War, a place where plans were made, messages delivered, and soldiers rested between skirmishes. Lives were lost, orders went unfulfilled, and some never departed the grounds alive. It is believed that these unresolved histories, grief, duty, and sudden death have bound the souls of those who died here to the property. They linger, not out of malice, but because the events of their lives and deaths left unfinished business, a need to witness the ongoing life of a place they once served. Guests frequently notice cold drafts along hallways or in corners of the dining room, a sudden chill that seems concentrated around certain tables. Shadows sometimes stretch or twist against the walls, forming vague humanoid shapes that disappear when approached. Visitors have reported feeling a presence behind them, even when the room appears empty, a weight on the senses that cannot be explained by the physical environment. These experiences are subtle yet persistent, leaving a lasting impression on those who notice them. Staff members have grown attuned to the nuances of the Caldwell House's haunting. They speak of the officers and the servants, acknowledging their presence while carrying out daily duties. Many have developed informal rituals to maintain harmony, setting tables with care, moving slowly through quiet corridors, or softly greeting the spirits in passing. These gestures are believed to temper the activity, reducing sudden noises or startling movements. Conversely, rushed or inattentive behavior is said to provoke stronger manifestations. Tables may shake more vigorously, chairs may shift with a clatter, and murmurs may grow louder, as if the spirits are demanding recognition. The dining experience at the Caldwell House is thus intertwined with history in a way that few modern restaurants can offer. While patrons enjoy carefully prepared meals and the inn's warm hospitality, the presence of the past adds a layer of depth and eeriness to every visit. Some guests have described the sensation of sharing a table with those long gone, observing their rituals and hearing fragments of conversations that predate modern life. Couples have remarked on the hauntingly romantic or melancholic quality of the space, noting the tension between life and death, the living and the departed, that hangs in the air like a tangible presence. Even when the inn is full of laughter and conversation, the echoes of the past persist. Typewriters, quills, and inkpots may be long gone, but the energy of meticulous record-keeping, planning, and correspondence remains, felt in the deliberate, almost ceremonial movements of the unseen. Soldiers are seen reviewing maps or pacing quietly, servants adjusting chairs or arranging place settings, all engaged in a silent reenactment of their duties. The effect is immersive, a sense that the Caldwell House functions as both a restaurant and a living museum of the Revolutionary era. Paranormal researchers have visited the Caldwell House, documenting unusual temperature drops, unexplained noises, and photographic anomalies, while skeptics attribute these experiences to drafts, acoustics, or imagination. Staff and repeated guest reports suggest a continuity that cannot be easily dismissed. The spirits, if that is indeed what they are consistent in their behaviors and locations, creating a haunting that feels structured, purposeful, and inextricably tied to the history of the inn. The Sag Harbor Inn and Restaurant, perched on the edge of Sag Harbor in Long Island, New York, is a place of quiet elegance and old-world charm. Its architecture reflects the nautical history of the region, with weathered wood, sweeping verandas, and expansive windows that offer sweeping views of the harbor's dark, glimmering waters. By day, the inn is a serene retreat for travelers seeking fine dining and a cozy atmosphere, with flickering lanterns, polished floors, and the gentle murmur of the tide in the distance. Yet, as evening falls and the harbor grows shadowed and still, the inn transforms. Guests begin to notice the inexplicable presence that seems to move with the ebb of the tide, leaving traces in the dim candlelight, and a sense that the past is never truly gone. The most common phenomenon reported by visitors is the sensation of cold hands brushing against their shoulders as they dine. Many initially dismiss the feeling as a trick of the mind or a draft from the old windows, but the regularity and intensity of the occurrences suggest something more. Patrons have described feeling a weight, a fleeting pressure that moves with them for a moment before vanishing. Often, the sensation is accompanied by a chill that spreads along the spine, leaving diners momentarily shivering despite the warmth of the restaurant. These encounters are brief, yet memorable, and they leave guests with the uncanny awareness that they are not alone. The inn's piano is another focal point of its haunting. Even when unplayed, it often seems to come alive at night. Soft, melancholy notes drift across the dining room, filling the space with an atmosphere of longing and nostalgia. The music is never chaotic. It flows with a deliberate, almost human rhythm, as if a ghostly musician sits unseen on the bench, coaxing emotion from the keys. Guests have described the piano's song as hauntingly beautiful, a lament that seems to tell stories of love, loss, and lives intertwined with the harbor's history. Many have paused mid-conversation, captivated by the notes that seem to carry the voices of the past across time. The origin of these spectral encounters is shrouded in local lore. Sag Harbor, once a thriving whaling town, is steeped in centuries of maritime history. Sailors, merchants, and townsfolk have walked the streets for generations, their lives intertwined with the sea and the land. Some stories suggest that the inn was built upon the foundations of earlier structures, where tragedies and heartache were not uncommon. The spirits of those who met untimely ends, lost at sea, betrayed by fortune, or consumed by sorrow, may have lingered, drawn to the inn's warmth and proximity to the harbor, where so much of their lives unfolded. Guests also report seeing fleeting shadows near the windows or along the hallways. At times, a figure appears just at the edge of candlelight, only to dissolve into the darkness when approached. Staff have spoken of catching glimpses of movement along the corridors that cannot be explained, swirling shadows that seem to pass through walls, or the slight reflection of a figure in a glass pane that vanishes when observed directly. These apparitions are rarely threatening. Instead, they evoke a sense of quiet presence, as if the spirits are observing the living with curiosity or remembrance. Other subtle phenomena enhance the inn's mysterious atmosphere. Chairs occasionally scrape the floor, as if nudged by unseen hands. Glasses tremble slightly on tables without cause, and small objects may shift positions, leaving diners and staff alike questioning what is real and what belongs to the unseen world. Candles flicker even when no breeze enters the room, and the temperature can drop suddenly near certain areas, as though the past has folded into the present. These signs are not violent or aggressive, but intimate whispers of life long ended, insisting on being noticed, acknowledged, and remembered. Staff at the Sag Harbor Inn have grown accustomed to these occurrences and speak of them with a mixture of respect and pragmatism. They refer to the unseen as the guests from the harbor, and many have learned to accommodate their presence. When arranging tables or preparing for evening service, staff often move with quiet care, leaving gestures of acknowledgement, a light touch on a chair, a nod to the empty piano, or the placement of a candle in a prominent position. Those who act hurriedly or disrespectfully report more pronounced activity, louder piano notes, stronger gusts of cold air, or a sensation of weight pressing unexpectedly against the back. The spirits seem to respond to the behavior of the living, a reminder that the inn is a shared space between worlds. Visitors, too, have embraced the uncanny charm of the inn. Many are drawn not only to the fine dining and harbor views, but also to the whispered promise of witnessing something extraordinary. Couples remark on the romantic, yet haunting ambience, describing how the ghostly presence adds depth to the flickering candlelight and the soft waves visible through the windows. Solo travelers often recount moments of connection with the past, feeling a hand, hearing a note, or glimpsing a figure, and leave with the sense that they have shared a fleeting moment with those long departed. Local historians and paranormal researchers have documented the inn's unusual activity, noting cold spots, auditory phenomena, and fleeting visual apparitions, while skeptics attribute these experiences to the building's age or environmental factors. The frequency and consistency of reports from staff and guests alike suggest a presence that cannot be easily dismissed. The ghosts, if they are indeed spirits, appear to be bound to the inn, tied to the harbor, and perhaps drawn by memories of the music, the warmth, and the life that once thrived within its walls. The Century House in Latham, New York, is more than just a finding establishment. It is a building steeped in history, tragedy, and lingering spirits. Constructed in 1790, the house has stood through centuries of change, witnessing generations of families, celebrations, and hardships. Its stately facade, elegant woodwork, and historic charm make it a destination for those seeking a refined dining experience. Yet, beneath the polished floors and the soft glow of chandeliers, the Century House holds memories of a darker past, memories that manifest in ways both subtle and unsettling, leaving guests and staff aware that they share the space with presences not entirely of this world. The most commonly reported apparitions are those of children said to have perished in a tragic fire long ago. While records are sparse, local legend tells of a blaze that swept through the house centuries ago, claiming the lives of several young children who were unable to escape. Since then, guests and staff alike have encountered what they describe as playful but eerie activity, manifestations that range from fleeting touches to the distant sound of laughter. Patrons often report the feeling of little fingers tugging at their clothing, small, insistent tugs that vanish as quickly as they appear. Some claim to feel a light brush against their ankle or shoulder as they navigate the dining area, a presence that is at once innocent and uncanny. The laughter of children is another common phenomenon. During busy evenings, when the dining room is filled with conversation and clinking glasses, faint giggles or soft chuckles can still be heard drifting through empty hallways or across the polished floors. Guests have paused mid-bite, glancing toward the walls or doorways, searching for the source. The sounds are ethereal and impossible to locate, emanating from spaces that are unoccupied. Some describe the laughter as cheerful and playful, while others sense an undertone of melancholy, as though the spirits are replaying fleeting moments of joy stolen by tragedy. The Century House also exhibits more sensory phenomena. Staff report sudden, inexplicable wafts of smoke, even when the kitchen and fireplaces are cold. The scent often appears and disappears in seconds, leaving a lingering awareness of past calamity. Patrons may notice a faint haze near corners of the dining room or a smoky aroma drifting through hallways, subtle reminders of the fire that left its mark both on the building and the lives connected to it. These occurrences are brief but powerful, and they lend the inn a sense of haunted history that permeates the air as tangibly as any aroma from the kitchen. Furniture and objects occasionally behave in ways that defy explanation. Chairs may rock slightly as though a child had been seated and then left, and tables can shift by mere inches, enough to catch the attention of observant diners. Small items, a napkin, a fork, a cup might move or fall without warning. Often in areas associated with sightings or sounds, staff have noted that these disturbances seem gentle rather than malicious, the manifestations of spirits who wish to be acknowledged rather than harm anyone. Their activity appears deliberate yet playful, suggesting children who have lingered in the home of their last memories, continuing routines of life that were abruptly interrupted. The architectural design of the Century House contributes to the haunting. Low ceilings, narrow hallways, and wooden floors amplify sound, making each creak, giggle, or brush of movement seem closer than it might be. Windows that overlook the grounds cast dim light that can create shifting shadows, occasionally forming figures at the periphery of vision. Guests often describe seeing fleeting glimpses of children darting along hallways or between rooms, their forms dissolving when approached. These visual phenomena are often paired with tactile sensations or the faint smell of smoke, creating a multisensory experience that reinforces the presence of the unseen. Staff have grown attuned to the subtle behaviors of the Century House's ghosts. They speak quietly of the little ones, acknowledging their presence while performing the routine tasks of serving meals and maintaining the dining area. Many have developed respectful rituals, such as quietly straightening chairs, gently tapping a table before seating diners, or leaving a small gesture like a candle or a napkin folded in a particular weight, certain spots in the dining room. They believe these gestures maintain a peaceful coexistence, tempering activity and allowing the spirits to remain playful without frightening guests. Those who fail to acknowledge the presence of the children sometimes report stronger manifestations, louder giggles, more pronounced tugs at clothing, or brief flashes of shadow along the walls. Guest reactions vary widely. Some are enchanted, seeing the activity as a charming and whimsical connection to the house's past. Couples often find the playful presence romantic or touching, while solo diners may experience a strange sense of companionship. The feeling that the children's spirits are curious observers of the present. Others are unsettled, particularly when the tactile sensations of small hands or sudden chills catch them unaware. Regardless of the emotional response, almost every visitor leaves with a heightened awareness that the Century House is a place where history lives, not only in memory and artifacts, but in the very fabric of the building itself. Paranormal researchers have visited the Century House, recording unexplained temperature drops, auditory phenomena, and visual anomalies. While skeptics may attribute these occurrences to drafts, acoustics, or imagination, the sheer consistency of reports, from staff and visitors alike, supports the presence of lingering spirits. The manifestations are rarely aggressive. They are persistent, subtle, and unmistakably tied to the building's tragic past. The evidence points to a lingering attachment, the echoes of children whose lives ended prematurely, yet whose energy continues to inhabit the spaces where they once felt safe and loved. The Goodwin House restaurant in New York's Hudson Valley is a place of rustic elegance, a restored farmhouse that draws visitors with its charm, locally sourced cuisine, and warm, inviting atmosphere. By day, it offers the serene comfort of pastoral life, sunlight streaming through tall windows, the gentle creak of wooden floors, and the aroma of freshly prepared dishes filling the dining room. Patrons relax under the soft glow of lanterns and chandeliers, unaware that as night falls, the inn's atmosphere transforms into something far less ordinary. Beyond the quiet charm of the farmstead lies a presence that has endured for decades, a lingering shadow that is both somber and unsettling, tied to the building's tragic past. At the heart of the Goodwin House's reputation is its attic, a space rarely accessed by staff and off-limits to guests. Here, the spirit of a former owner is said to linger, a man who took his own life many years ago under circumstances that remain largely shrouded in rumor and sorrow. Those who have dined late report hearing the sound of footsteps pacing above, deliberate and rhythmic, echoing through the wooden beams and down into the dining room below. The noise is distinct, heavy, and purposeful, impossible to attribute to settling wood or ordinary house sounds. Guests often pause mid-meal, glancing upward with unease as the footsteps continue, unseen yet undeniably present. Mirrors throughout the restaurant seem to take on a life of their own after dark. Patrons have described them fogging inexplicably, as if breathing from some unseen source. The surface appears to ripple ever so slightly, as though the reflections themselves are aware, responding to the energies in the room. Guests looking into the mirrors sometimes catch fleeting images at the periphery of their vision, a shadow just behind their reflection, a flicker of movement that vanishes when they turn. It is subtle but disquieting, a visual echo that hints at the weight of history pressing into the present. Candles and lanterns also respond to the invisible presence. Even in the absence of wind, flames flicker, gutter, or dim as though influenced by some unseen breath. Waitstaff often notice these changes first, recognizing the subtle signals that the house is no longer just a place for food and conversation. Patrons may feel a sudden chill as they pass certain corners or hear objects shift slightly on the wooden tables. The atmosphere thick with energy that is tangible, yet impossible to grasp. The presence is neither overtly violent nor malevolent, but persistent. A quiet insistence that the past has not been left behind. Guests describe a sense of being watched, a subtle tension that grows as the night deepens. Some report hearing whispers indistinct, unintelligible flowing through the dining room or drifting down the hallways. Others feel sudden brushes against their arms or shoulders, light and fleeting, as though the spirit is testing boundaries or seeking acknowledgement. The tactile encounters are often paired with auditory or visual phenomena, creating a layered haunting that engages multiple senses. Many who experience it describe a mixture of fear and fascination, a recognition that they are sharing the space with something that exists outside ordinary time. The restaurant's architecture amplifies the haunting. Low ceilings, exposed beams, and narrow hallways carry sound in ways that can make even small noises appear amplified or displaced. The attic, directly above the main dining area, acts as a conduit, transmitting the echo of footsteps into the rooms below. Windows reflect candlelight in unpredictable ways, creating shifting shadows that seem alive. Mirrors, polished wood, and glassware all catch and distort light, enhancing the sense that the house itself is a living, breathing entity. Guests often remark that the subtle disturbances, flickering flames, shifting shadows, echoing footsteps, feel almost like conversation, a silent interaction between the living and the unseen. Staff at the Goodwin House have learned to coexist with these manifestations. They speak quietly of the owner or the attic presence, acknowledging its existence while maintaining the daily routines of the restaurant. Many have adopted respectful practices, closing the attic door gently, avoiding loud noises near certain tables, and subtly acknowledging the presence with a nod or whispered greeting. These small acts seem to temper the activity, allowing diners to enjoy their meals with only occasional reminders that the building's past is never fully gone. Conversely, hurried or careless behavior can provoke more noticeable disturbances. Flames flicker more violently, mirrors fog more distinctly, and footsteps grow louder, as if the spirit is reminding the living to respect the space. Visitors, to become part of this layered history. Some are enchanted, finding the subtle activity charming or evocative of the region's long and storied past. Couples often describe the ambience as romantic yet haunting, the flickering candlelight, mirrored reflections, and occasional unseen touches, adding a sense of intimacy and mystery. Solo diners frequently report feeling a connection with the unseen, sensing the presence of the past while enjoying their meals. A quiet acknowledgement of the lives that unfolded within the same walls over centuries. Paranormal researchers and curious historians have documented the Goodwin House's unusual phenomena, noting temperature fluctuations, auditory anomalies, and visual irregularities. While skeptics may attribute the experiences to drafts, structural settling, or imagination, the consistency and multisensory nature of the occurrences suggest an enduring presence. The energy in the house is persistent, respectful, yet insistent, and tied intimately to the tragic story of the former owner who never left. The Merchant S House Cafe, tucked quietly in a corner of New York City's historic district, is a charming spot where the past and present converge in subtle, eerie ways. Though small, with exposed brick walls and soft amber lighting, the cafe carries an energy far beyond its modest size, a lingering echo from the neighboring Merchant's House Museum, which has preserved the home of the Treadwell family since the 19th century. Patrons come for coffee, pastries, and the cozy atmosphere, but many find themselves sharing the space with more than just the living. Guests have reported moments that are at once ordinary and inexplicably haunted. Instances that suggest the city's history is not confined to museums and plaques. It lives, breathes, and sometimes waits quietly in a corner with a cup of tea. The most frequently reported phenomenon is the presence of a pale woman, often seated alone in the same corner of the cafe. She is described as wearing period attire, her posture elegant and composed, her gaze distant yet aware. The cup before her appears to steam gently, as if freshly poured, though no hand ever moves to lift it. Guests have approached the figure, their curiosity overcoming hesitation, only to find that she vanishes the moment they reach the chair. All that remains is the faint warmth of the seat and a lingering scent of tea. This fleeting encounter leaves a haunting impression, the memory of a presence both comforting and impossible to fully grasp. It is widely believed among locals and historians that this apparition is a member of the Treadwell family, whose home across the street has been meticulously preserved. The Treadwells lived in the Merchant's House throughout the 19th century, their lives documented in journals, letters, and preserved household items. Stories suggest that some family members were deeply attached to the home and the routines it held, particularly those moments of quiet reflection over tea. The cafe's energy seems to capture that devotion, a desire for continuity, a longing to remain tethered to familiar rituals and spaces even after death. Other manifestations within the cafe are more subtle but equally compelling. Guests report feeling sudden chills as they pass certain tables, the air shifting as though carrying a breath from another century. Chairs sometimes scrape softly across the floor when no one is seated nearby, and the faint clink of a spoon against a porcelain cup is occasionally heard from a table that appears otherwise empty. These occurrences are never aggressive or violent. Instead, they feel like invitations to notice, reminders that the past lingers in places of comfort and reflection. Patrons often describe a sense of being observed without fear, as if welcomed into a quiet intimacy with history itself. The cafe's mirrors and glass surfaces seem particularly sensitive to the presence of the unseen. Patrons have reported subtle distortions in reflections, fleeting movements at the periphery of vision, or a gentle fogging of glass without cause. Candles or small lights flicker without drafts, casting shadows that bend in unusual ways, sometimes forming vague human shapes that vanish when directly observed. The combined effect is a multi-sensory haunting, one that engages sight, touch, and even smell. The subtle aroma of tea or faint perfume often accompanies sightings of the pale woman, heightening the realism of her spectral presence. Staff at the Merchant's House Cafe have learned to work alongside these peculiarities. Many speak quietly of the woman in the corner, referring to her as the tea guest or the Treadwell lady. They treat her presence with respect, leaving her corner undisturbed, gently arranging tables and chairs and moving with quiet care during busy hours. Servers note that when the area is treated thoughtfully, the activity is minimal. Mirrors fog less, lights flicker gently rather than wildly, and the air seems warmer. When rushed or careless behavior occurs, however, the manifestations are more noticeable. Cups clink without contact, chairs shift more aggressively, and the faint scent of tea intensifies. These subtle interactions suggest that the spirits respond to awareness and respect, as though the living are participants in a shared, delicate balance. Guest reactions to these experiences vary widely. Some are enchanted, feeling privileged to witness the lingering presence of a bygone era. Couples often find the encounter romantic, a quiet connection bridging centuries. Solo visitors frequently describe moments of reflection, sensing a comforting companionship in the unseen figure. A reminder that human experience, its rituals, pleasures, and habits transcends the limits of mortality. Others are unnerved, particularly when the figure vanishes before their eyes, leaving the empty chair and warm seat as evidence that something inexplicable has occurred. Regardless of reaction, nearly all who experience it carry a vivid memory of the moment, a story they recount with fascination long after leaving the cafe. The cafe's historical connection deepens the impact of these hauntings. The Treadwell family lived in a city that was rapidly transforming, witnessing the evolution of Manhattan from quiet streets to a bustling metropolis. The cafe sits on a block that has retained its historic character, offering a rare continuity amidst the modern chaos of the city. Patrons sense this link intuitively. The pale woman represents a bridge to the past, a figure rooted in the domestic intimacy of family life and quiet reflection amidst a world that changed rapidly around her. The haunting is not frightening in the traditional sense. It is evocative, melancholic, and deeply human. Paranormal researchers and historians have visited the Merchant's House Cave, noting consistent reports of visual, auditory, and olfactory phenomena, while skeptics might attribute these experiences to imagination or coincidence. The regularity and detail of the sightings make a compelling case for a lingering presence. The spirit seems to participate in the cafe's life without disrupting it, quietly maintaining a ritual she once held dear, a cup of tea, a moment of contemplation, a presence observed but untouchable. And so, our dinner with the dead comes to a close. But remember, when you dine in New York, you never truly eat alone. Every candlelit table, every quiet booth, every polished bar holds echoes of laughter, love, and loss. Perhaps next time you feel a chill run down your spine mid-meal, or hear the clink of a glass behind you when no one's there, don't be afraid. Just whisper cheers to the spirits who dine forever beside you. Until next time, my haunted hearts, sleep with your lights low and your plates empty, because the dead are always hungry.